Homies, everybody's here. It's a hump day, a Wednesday evening. You're halfway through your week. You're tuning in to think about video games in a live book club. Everything is looking rosy and looking up. Welcome to Tales of Praxis, my friends. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of WithTheTerribleFate.com, your online volunteer publication home for all of the most in-depth analytical celebrations of the storytelling in our favorite medium, video games. Kind of a good news, bad news situation. If you showed up on Monday, you saw we made affiliate status. We had all of these epic sponsors, everyone from Shinra to Umbrella to the Gorman Brothers. Then I turned around and said, that doesn't really feel in keeping with the ethos of With the Terrible Fate. So they said, that's fine, but we'll take our heaps of evil money with us. So we're back to the stream as usual, as you know and love it. But now we're poor again, so had to give back all of the fancy trappings of cool guy glasses and Eurotrash accent and everything in between. So back to zero. But we have our ethics to keep us warm at night. So it all works out. Men in Black, is that the vibe I was giving off? I wouldn't have done that. I would just say generic Eurotrash pottery. Maybe that's not a satisfying answer. It was kind of an amalgam of several internet personalities who shall not be named, coupled with 4 years of German language and German culture education in high school. So if my German teachers or German friends happen to be watching this, I apologize. It's not a knock against you. It's the I guess the entertainment output of 4 years of education in a language and literature that I really do quite enjoy. There's nothing like reading Kafka in German. We have some updates, my friends, on this Wednesday, so we'll get right to it so we can get right into Tales of Graces. First off, on the video quality, I promised more than once and then subsequently forgot to get an HDMI splitter to hopefully make the video feed much better. That's in the mail now, and it is promised by Amazon to get here on Friday. So I'm hopeful it'll be here in time for the Friday stream. And by all accounts, I mean, it's HDMI as opposed to a component input, so I see no reason that it shouldn't improve the quality pretty starkly. So stay tuned for that. That at least will be an upgrade on the stream as we go on. That's okay, Grail. I hope the timed side quest worked out all right. Did you get the big Oron sword in the end? That's my go-to for a timed side quest. Chrissy, welcome. Great to see you too. Welcome. Nice to have you here in a timely manner. Speaking of timeliness, I know Chrissy listened to this, but for those who may not have gotten the chance, I hope you had a spooky Halloween. If you got to play anything spooky or haunted on the 31st of October, tell the chat, shout it out, what got your horror genes doing whatever it is genes do. But Dan and I hopped on the podcast recording suite right after the stream on Monday and talked about horror games, storytelling, everything from the good and the bad and the ugly of glitches to the past, present, and future of Five Nights at Freddy's, for better or worse. If you've been following the stream and have gotten what I've said about Dan's views on it, you know it's mostly for worse. JRPG horror moments, especially pertinent to what we've been doing on Tales of Praxis, and I shout out Tales of Graces for reasons that will be obvious to all of you. Superhero stories, Lies of P, and in our conversations about the current moment in horror, why it might be right, not just in terms of the franchise, but more broadly, to call this the Silent Hill moment in horror video game storytelling more generally. So if you want to know what that means, check out the podcast. It's an hour. It'll give you something to enjoy while you're, carving a pumpkin after Halloween or whatever it is that the cool kids do. Slay the Princess. That sounds like a really interesting name. I've never even heard of that. I'll have to check that out. Oh, thank you, Chrissy. I'm glad you recommend the episode. Yeah, I appreciate you chatting to us on Twitter about it. That was a fun conversation. I'm not in the the current rumor mill cycle of stuff that's happening with Silent Hill, but I'm sure that Dan is, so I imagine he'll answer your question at some point too. It's a good segue into thinking about podcasts more broadly, because I'm excited to broach with the stream right after Dan and I sat down and recorded that. We had a moment where we looked at each other and kind of said, as we sometimes do, man, that was really fun. It didn't take that much effort to put together. Should we get back into a vibe of just doing weekly podcasts like we've sometimes done over the course of With the Terrible Fates history? And we both got really excited about that. not only in terms of having just a kind of deconstructed format, chatting about whatever it is that we're working through every week, because oftentimes some of the conversations with him and with gamers more broadly that I get the most out of are the most organic and kind of unstructured and unprepared ones. So I always find myself saying when we, chat over a meal at PAX or something like that, man, I wish we were recording that so we could just share it with everyone. So we're going to actually try to do more of that. But then the second thing, which I hope will be fun, you tell me if you think this is going to be fun, but I suggested, man, Dan, we've been doing the stream. You all seem to be enjoying this kind of live book club vibe. Why don't we consider trying something like a live video streamed podcast where people could listen in if they wanted to. They could voice their contributions in the chat, but it'd also be recorded so people can listen to it after the fact if they want to. So if that interests you, let me know. If it doesn't, let me know too. But we had been toying around with the idea of doing something easy like slotting in a recording and that kind of experience, maybe right after one of the Tales of Praxis streams on a weekly basis. So we're still very much mulling what the schedule and format might look like, but I'll tell you, we're both very excited about it. We think it could be a good way to just cultivate more of this live conversational community that is a logical offshoot of everything that we're trying to cultivate at With a Terrible Fate. And so if it's interesting to you, definitely excited to move forward and explore that. Pottery, please, absolutely recommend and drop your friend's horror audio drama. That sounds like exactly the kind of thing I would like to dive into. Yeah, no, you've got me interested enough to at least look into Ascension, Chrissy, because honestly, I'll confess I'm a bad gamer who's not plugged in, and I wasn't even aware of it before you mentioned it. So I will take a look and I will have thoughts, but I have not. Yeah, that's right. We did. It was kind of, I hadn't been thinking of that as kind of a live podcast format, but it was sort of similar conversational when we were at PAX. And you did enjoy that, Grail. Well, thank you. That's good. I hadn't made that connection. There you go. All the better. Well, hopefully this will be a little more structured than that, yet less structured than what our podcasts typically have been in the past. So something of a sweet spot, but as with all these things, it can evolve over time, and I'll definitely keep you posted. Badlands Cola. All right. I am going to copy that to my clipboard right now, Pottery, so I can check that out. And Slay the Princess also. Yes, always if it's something that you think will be relevant to these sorts of thoughtful gamers and thinkers, feel free to plug it in the chat. There's no worries about that. Reddit is sometimes to be believed and sometimes not, as I think we all know. So, but it's always worth checking out one way or another. In other Tales of Praxis specific news, some of you may have seen this. Chrissy, I know you saw it, but Aaron finally got off his butt today and he put together I was going to say beautiful. Beautiful is probably a stretch, but a graphic to help everyone keep track of what I'm thinking and what I'm planning for the Beyond the Dawn streams. So I figured, in keeping with what is kind of my play style for digesting things as soon as they come out, and also just in terms of capturing the moment of people who are excited about Beyond the Dawn, I structured it as a little bit of a binge from when Beyond the Dawn comes out through to the beginning of the following week. So it's going to interrupt the Tales of Graces stream a little bit. Check out the graphic. It's in a nice little pretty-ish calendar format. But the thought is basically similar to what I was saying on Monday. I'm thinking starting on Thursday when it's released, we'll do the same window of time as we usually do, just blown out on an hour by either side. So we'll have nice, healthy 5-hour blocks for good binges of this brand new Tales content, which should be a lot of fun. And I'm just going to truck through in that same window from Thursday through to the next Tuesday is when I've blocked it off. What some of the producers behind it have said is that it's kind of a 20-ish hour play style for the game. And as you know, with the conversation and everything that we provide to dig into it, I'm expecting we'll probably blow up that playtime a significant amount. But if we end up using fewer of the streams, so much the better. If we end up using more, we can always expand it out. But that's a tentative schedule just so everyone can plan and be excited. And I know already there are some scheduling conflicts, like you mentioned, Grail, but all the VODs will be up and accessible, and hopefully everyone who's into it can find time to drop by when they want to and when they're interested, or play through it on your own and drop in just to give your impressions alongside it. We'll be making it as spoiler-free as possible with regard to Beyond the Dawn specifically, but of course a lot of the fun will be bringing in much of the background content from Tales of Arise and the series more broadly, per the whole mandate of Tales of Praxis, so you can look forward to that, and it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm pretty sure based on what they've said, it will not be as long as the Xenoblade Chronicles DLC, but I'm also pretty confident, especially after playing Alicia's story for Tales of Zestiria, that it's going to be really rich, really rewarding, and really interesting. So even just putting together the schedule got me really excited about it. I imagine it'll be fun for all of us, and so cool to have the first proper new piece of Tales content that's come out since the beginning of Tales of Praxis to work through with fresh eyes, everyone at the same time, and kind of just further leveling up the live book club idea to, okay, how do we sink our teeth into something new together, given that we're all fans with the shared background of the series. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll all enjoy it together, and God knows we'll have a lot to talk about and write about. I am still hoping and working in the writer's room of getting an expanded commentary of the lecture that I gave at PAX West on Tales of Arise out before that. So stay tuned. Probably going to log some time in that after this stream. If I can put down Tales of Eternia, because I also got through the first disc of that. And speaking of no spoilers, but things that have wowed me, if you know, you know, and Grail, I know you know, so I'll allude to this moment, but I'm not going to spoil anything about it because I know not that many people have played Eternia, but I got to the end of the first disc. It's a fantastic one of those old school 2000 PlayStation games, PlayStation JRPGs, that is broken down with very compelling act breaks by the discs. At least that's how the first disc is structured. And I started today wrapping up the disc with just the biggest smile on my face because it was one of my favorite old school instances that I've experienced in a while of just a moving, awesome plot twist that makes perfect sense once you see it. But you're so engrossed in the story, or I was at least, that I didn't see it coming even a mile away, even though I totally should have. So, Grail, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's what happens right at the end of the first disc. But I loved it. I was smiling at all the connections. It's a wonderful kind of prefiguration of something very similar that happens in Tales of Vesperia, which I know we all have a lot of love for. So I'm excited to continue plowing through that as well, and I'll keep you posted on my impressions of that. The one other thing that I wanted to mention before we get back into this stream, and I'll pivot to the Tales of Graces overlay here. I was debating whether or not to share this with you all, but I figured I would because here's a funny thing about living with video games and working in the philosophy of game literature and doing that in what I take to be a professional way, even though we're still volunteer in the sense of, not being able to make a career that funds our existence out of it. Back when I first started with The Terrible Fate in undergrad, I had this big chip on my shoulder, as I think many young, thoughtful gamers do, where I really felt like I had something to prove, and I always had to be sort of posturing to people who didn't believe in the value of video games as a medium that this is really serious. This is something where, there's an expertise to be had, and that's what I'm offering. And so if you go back and look at the way that With a Terrible Fate was when it first started, it was very much kind of, in a way that we would never do now, and which we pretty quickly got away from, kind of gatekeepery, trying to seem very ivory tower and protective of this kind of knowledge base that we were cultivating. And so I, as much as the site more broadly, tried to preemptively posture myself as this kind of inaccessible academic, which I will say for the record is a terrible idea and terrible way to conduct your life, whether you're an actual academic or not. I think, proper tenured professors should, market themselves as more accessible and speaking ordinary language. I think all the more so if you're engaging analytically and rigorously with a popular medium such as video games. And so I've really tried, as we've been doing with the stream, to, just take away the veneer of a lot of, what can seem holier than thou about academic analysis and get down to the root of why this stuff is worth celebrating in the first place and why it can be so personally valuable. Chrissy, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. It may also be the kind of thing that was built up in my head more so than anything. But if you go back and look at just some of the ways in which I presented myself as much as anything, and in a lot of the kind of responses and defensiveness that I had to many of the comments that people would level against my work, it was in a lot of that kind of attitude. So I'm sure I could find examples, or maybe it was just all in my head and it was a bit of imposter syndrome. Either way, 6 of 1, right? That's a long-winded way of saying everything that I've said about the motivation for starting Tales of Praxis and the capacity for video games as an interactive medium to really give the people who play them this equipment and mode of engagement to allow them to become more robust and fulfilled actors in their real lives. That is not academic posturing. That is genuinely through and through how I feel and why I think that video games are the most important narrative medium out there, and that will only continue to increasingly be the case as more and more people and more generations grow up with video games as their default mode of consuming stories. And I say that by way of saying, when you go through hard challenges in your life or feel lost in one way or another, video games can be sometimes, if you're literate in them and you know how to engage with them, this kind of panacea to ape the nomenclature from the Tales games, this cure-all, or at least some kind of remedy for what it is that you're going through in your life and help you to figure out how to navigate your way out of it. So that's a long preamble to say that actually, if I'm a little off on the stream tonight, as I said, I consider this to be the real work that I do and my contribution to the world, but it's sadly not enough to pay the bills yet. And so I do other things in my day life with a day job that is not as fulfilling or meaningful as this in order to pay the bills. And yesterday, the main one of those day jobs laid off the entire department in which I was involved, including myself. So it was a huge surprise. It was not handled very well, in my opinion. It displaced a lot of people. I'm okay, so don't worry about me. Certainly threw me off my game a little bit. And I was thinking, as I was settling in to get ready for the stream and to say hello to all of you all again, I was thinking first, well, am I going to be off in a way that I shouldn't even stream, or should I just avoid it and focus on the game? But the more I was thinking about everything that I was just telling you in terms of why it is that I really think this kind of analytical and academic work merits this level of investment and commitment to, the more I felt like, no, this is exactly the kind of moment in my life when I would be playing games anyway, in order to think my way out of what it is that I'm going through into what it is that I'm going to do next. And I hope that games, whatever games they may be, whether they're the Tales games or another game that you love, can do that same thing for you. I think there's truly no limit in my mind to the human capacity for meaning that can be accessed in a thoughtful video game story. And so I think we should take that seriously. We should celebrate that as we do on the stream. And we should take seriously when other people share with us and when we consider ourselves the moments in our lives that have been informed in one way or another by video games. There's a special magic to them, and I hope you have that all for yourselves too. So thank you for being here with me on this stream in particular. I think it's a good celebratory one for that. There you go, Pottery. I've said this many times in many different contexts, but I really feel as though I owe most of my vocabulary to JRPGs. My favorite example, it's not as high-minded an example, but the word philanderer, that will forever be burned in my head as an insincere man who plays around with many women, because Presea defines it as such in relation to Zelos in Tales of Symphonia. So God bless JRPGs for being so thoughtful, offering so much, and also for the localizers of them, making a concerted effort to do justice to the scripts and thereby oftentimes expanding the vocabularies of the kids who play them. I think that's a very real and special thing. Thank you for your well wishes, Chrissy, and thank you, Grail. Yes, as I've said before also, like everything about the real life JRPG party rings true. So everything about the value of friendship and what people means to each other, it feels really trite and cliche until you experience it in your real life. And then you realize, oh, that's actually all that life is about, which is why all these stories keep coming back to it in incredibly sophisticated, but also simple and resonant and emotional ways. So hearts out to all of you. Hats off to that. There you go. And it's a great way to learn Japanese. And Grail, I know more than a few people in my life who have been inspired to learn Japanese through Japanese pop culture and who have been helped on that journey by watching anime and playing games in Japanese and things like that. So how wonderful to have that kind of feedback loop. I titled this stream somewhat glibly, but also in a very sad way, Cats in the Cradle. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, yeah. You know we'll have a good time then. I can't use the audio on Twitch, but nothing could stop me from singing poorly as I do. The classic song about fraught father-son relationships. And of course, we have a moment like that with Asbel now returning to his hometown, having learned that his dad died in this conflict between Lant and Fendel, and that there was an opportunity for him to come back and help, but he was busy with his knightly duties and therefore didn't get the letter and totally kind of preemptively robbed himself of that opportunity. The one other thing that I wanted to say by way of grounding the stream in the personal and inviting us all to think about it personally is we didn't really dwell on this at the end of the last stream, but we're now back in Lant, in the hometown of Asbel and Cheria, and where we spent the childhood that grounded the beginning of the story in a very new context. And so I wanted to just ask all of you, after I adjust my headphones, which are quickly falling off of Aaron's head, have you ever had a moment in your life when, after years or a long time away, you've come back to some kind of home or a place that used to be familiar to you in a very different context? And what was that like? What was the phenomenology of that experience? I'll give you one just by way of seeding the conversation that came to mind immediately for me. My 5th year high school reunion. I don't know how many of you have gone to reunions like that. For me, it was a really crazy experience because think of where you are when you're 5 years out of high school. You're kind of just coming into your own as more of an adult as opposed to an adolescent. And you go back and have the opportunity to see the place where you grew up, where you probably struggled through a lot of interpersonal and personal identity challenges. And all of those old memories come flooding back, but in a new context of who you're kind of shaping yourself into. And I remember having this experience that almost felt like it could have been represented in a video game or a narrative as sort of superimposed timelines. Because as I've talked about on the stream and in my work before, I was a big theater nerd in high school. Surprise, surprise. A lot of my first work on video games came out of an obsession with theater. So I wrote scripts, I directed, I acted. And when I went back to the theater building at my high school, it was crazy because I was visiting it 5 years out with a lot of my friends. And I was in that new context. So I had gone off to college and it felt like just a place that was now inhabited by new students with their own lives and contexts, and not everything was the same. But I wandered through places like backstage and the black box where a lot of the smaller student run plays were performed and the main stage. And I had this vivid overlaid experience of like the memories played before me as if it were a film or something cinematic of everything I had been through in that theater at different points in my 4 years there. And it was the closest I've ever gotten, I think, to what some people talk about as an out-of-body experience, because it did feel almost out of time. Something similar, honestly, to the kind of time travel we've spoken about that even happens in the metaphorical and symbolic sense in many of the Tales games, even if it's not literal time travel. And without giving too much away about Tales of Fantasia, because that's fresh in my mind, as I'm talking about it now, it also occurs to me it's pretty similar to what happens with Klaus in his resolution scene the night before they go off to the final battle, because Tales of Fantasia, surprise, surprise, is a time travel story. And Klaus, the summoner, during that time, he calls our good old friend Origin before him and says, "Hey, can you show me a window into the past?" And Origin does that in a very touching and heartfelt way that I won't get into or belabor. But that kind of window into one's past while still remaining tethered to the present, I think, is a very unnerving and kind of uncanny valley of an experience. And it strikes me that that might be of a piece with what it is that we're going to experience in this next phase of the story with Asbel and Cheria and the rest of our group. So that's my food for thought as we dive back into this. Reject family, embrace learning how to protect the people you care about. I love it. Oh, there you go. Yes, it could also, of course, be likened to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Oh, there we go. That was 25 minutes for a preamble, so we're tightening that up a little bit. And also just 25 minutes before we got the first shout out to Xenoblade Chronicles, which I don't know if that's a record. Probably not for us, but it's on a par, at least, with our timing. Let's see if I can get my camera a bit better. Say hello to the resident repeatlet who is saying hi to us. That is the one thing. Maybe by the time we start Beyond the Dawn, the more we joke about having a permanent Doge cam, or repeat cam or whatever we want to call it for rewards or certain moments in the stream or whatever, the more I get very excited about it. So we'll see, but I'm moderately invested in making that happen. It's simply too good, the picture of that dog. Yeah, you might be a few years out from it, Grail, but trust the old men among us, it will happen. It's one of those things where I think we talked about this in the stream. Yeah, we were talking about it in the childhood arc. Everyone wants to grow up and be an adult until you actually are. So brace yourself and enjoy not yet having access to that emotional palette. You will. And then you'll go back and play these games and do a whole Tales of Praxis of your own. And none of them will be the same, yet they will all be richer for it. All right, and we're rolling out. Trying to think. I feel like other words like panakia, as you were saying, pottery, I totally had a warped understanding of from reading, but also from games for a while. I think one that always messes me up, and I'm willing to blame the Tales games for this because it's not me. They just are inconsistent about how this is pronounced. Mana versus mana? And like, granted, that's a small difference, and my understanding at least is that both are acceptable, but the fact that they're pronounced differently in different games that even happen within the same world, like Symphonia versus Dawn of the New World. Just the lack of consistency. It's like nails against the chalkboard in my pedantic mind. A skip by Launt Hill? All right. We didn't pass Launt Hill already, right, Grail? It's on the way here? On North Launt Road? I think this is the right direction.
I can't lose.
Thank you.
Ready? Roll him down. Die. Fall.
Oh, I'm getting in the habit of reading these things so that it actually is a habit by later in the game. All right. I was thinking also maybe the thing that will help Aaron to develop that facility with the game's weakness system, because we talked about how to prioritize titles before. As much as I like 100%ing titles and then moving on, I think it would be helpful to instead prioritize as much as we can learning different burst starts for Asbel, because then as we get a broader palette of that, I assume it'll also be easier to actually have resources on hand to target the different kinds of enemies. So, actually, that's such a good idea that Aaron had. I'm going to stop and do that real quick. If you keep using a title after learning all its skills, you'll eventually master it. Oh, so there's something even beyond level 5. JRPGs, I love you so. Making any equipped effects rise dramatically in effectiveness. This can be especially helpful against powerful foes, but you should still focus your efforts on learning as many skills as you can, at least early on. The game seems to be reinforcing what it was that I was saying. Yeah, only 6, but I mean, for instance, look at this, right? The title that we have equipped, it's just for enhancing Nimble Fang, so that's not going to get us anywhere. I'll bet you there are some titles that will go some distance towards giving us new arts, right? This one has Wolfwind Fang, but that's not until it's maxed out. This one has a defensive art, Cross Nova. Anything over here? Shockwave Slash, Stagger Strike. Oh, I see. And A indicates assault art versus B being burst art, so that makes sense. This is Shockwave Slash. Is that one that we have already? We do have Shockwave Slash already. So where was the one that gave us a new one at 5? Oh, but that was an A art also. X and then square. Well, I'm doing that. That doesn't seem to be helping me. But I also, it doesn't look like, it looks like all the ones we have now are just enhancing the arts that we already have, which is frustrating, but I guess that's good to know we're not missing out on anything at least. This one we're only at level 2 for, and it enhances vitality, which I like, so why don't we at least switch it up to that? That seems good. I like the idea of something that improves CC at level 5. Oh, I see. Good. Well, I think we figured it out for now. I'll keep in mind that philosophy as we open up more titles. I'm sure it'll become useful at some point. Pretty ribbon. Is that better for Cheria? Pretty is always better than not pretty. If Tales games have taught me any single thing, if there's one lesson and only one to learn from JRPGs, it's that pretty is always better. As I'm easing back into the combat system of Graces from playing a lot of Eternia this morning, I know I said on Monday when I was kind of out of it that Eternia's combat felt really fast-paced. I wanted to expand on that just a little bit because, first of all, if you've ever played either of the first two Tales games, Fantasia or Destiny, you know what I'm talking about when I say they're very slow. Like, you can almost feel the game like making an effort to render everything, and anytime there's a spell cast or something, it's like really beautiful and thoughtful animations, but it completely slows down and interrupts the tempo of the fight. So battles take forever, and couple that with all the random interactions that you have, or the random encounters, excuse me, and it can be really frustrating, especially when you're working your way through a dungeon with puzzles that are much harder than you get in the average modern Tales game. And then in more modern Tales games, like what we have here, what we're working through with Zestiria and Berseria, it's a much more fluid combat system, but it's something that very quickly feels like the Tales series is specializing in creating a combat language all its own. And while it's faster paced than those original games, I would still say there's a lot of like, at least potential for strategy within it that can slow it down and make the fights a bit more moderately paced. Tales of Eternia, though, it's like, if you don't know and you haven't played it, I would encourage like at least watching a little bit of a playthrough, because then you'll know what I'm talking about right away. And Grail, I know you've played it and you also play a lot of fighting games, so you'll probably be able to put towards what I'm talking about better than me. But it feels almost like the one time in the series that I've seen Bamco, or Namco at that point, really breathe in arcade-style combat. Like, it's so fast, all the attacks just hit. They don't even give you the option to advance out of the post-battle window after it ends. It just automatically advances for you. So little touches like that, and just the rate at which things are executed, damage is dealt, things are resolved. It's all very fast. In a way where like it's not as if I'm disappointed that things are paced in the way they are in the rest of the series, but it does feel, especially in those older games, like a little bit of a breath of fresh air. So it's fun to do that, and then also fun to have two different paces in the very same day.
This road hasn't changed at all in the past 7 years.
Yeah, the darkness does kind of work for this area in this context of the game, doesn't it, Grail?
If you just take a moment to look. Maybe time just hasn't moved on for you.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I am just living in the past.
Oh no, is it what I was just talking about?
I have so many regrets about who I was 7 years ago. I've devoted my life trying to reclaim what was lost. And
Stop it. Just stop. She's dead and there's no going back.
Wow. Remember how carefree, like truly carefree, those poor kids were 7 years ago? The tonal shift is just so total. I love it. Really dissonant with the music also, if you listen to the bombast of this track in contrast with what Cheria is saying. She's dead and there's no going back. My God. It is insane, Grail, also. Yes, thank you for using that word. And you saying that makes me feel better because you know that I'm not in these games for the combat in the same sense that you are, and my facility is obviously less than yours. But one of my first reactions to Eternia was like, I played through the first few hours of it, and I looked at Evie and I said, man, am I dying like a lot more than usual? Which I think is just another artifact of how fast-paced it really is. But it is just, it's nuts. Like, you have to manage things in such a different way, and it's not going to wait for you to keep up with it. Not with hordes of skeletons, nor literal grim reapers. Pottery, since I know you're an I think you should leave fan, even though you haven't played Eternia. So many skeleton enemies, so many exclamations by Aaron that he can't deal with the friggin' bonies.
Okay, let's do this.
Roll him down! Roll him down!
Don't let them lay an egg, Scrooge! I'm also just going to say, for the benefit of the stream, all of you would appreciate my humor much more if you took, like, 3 hours out of your day to watch every season of I Think You Should Leave.
That should buy us some time.
So that's my PSA. The skeletons pull your hair up, but not out. They just want another chance at life, man. I texted Dan, actually, during Eternia, because one of the first areas you go into is this forest of lost souls, and there are a bunch of skeletons in there. And the actual explanation that the characters give is that there are a bunch of lost souls trying to take your bodies in order to have another chance at life. So I told Dan, I said, Dan, I think Tim Robinson just stole the entire premise for that bit from Tales of Eternia back in 2000. Oh, it was great. Once you find an attribute that your enemy is weak against, don't get lazy. All right, this is what Aaron needs to hear. Beat it into me. Many enemies have multiple weak points, and the more of them you hit, the more damage you can do. If you manage to strike every weak point of the enemy, your CC will be completely restored. You'll even restore Ellis to the mixer, and men will want to be you, and women will want to be with you? Nah, I'm playing. Why, you ask? Oh, that's a secret. They're not going to explain it to me? Maybe they'll explain it to me later. Yep, that first boss fight is nuts. That is exactly what happened to me. He used that spell you're talking about, and I did a double take. I was like, did that really just happen to me? And oh my God, what do I do? I really thought I don't think I'd saved before then either, because who saves that early in one of those games? So I was like, oh, am I just going to have to start this entire game over? Although, I of course didn't realize at that point, but another thing I love Tales of Eternia for is it's fast-paced and nuts like that, but if your party is wiped out, you at least get the chance to retry as opposed to losing a lot of your progress, which I think is also part of what helps it to feel fast-paced, like you're just compounding experience on experience either way, which is a lot of fun. But I do think, I can't tell if you were joking or not, Grail, but I do feel like it works better in Tales of Eternia for all the reasons we're talking about than it does in Fantasia. I wonder that too. So I think they had it in Eternia. They didn't have it in Destiny. This is what I was saying before too about Eternia, I feel like being the source code for a lot of things that then came out in later Tales games. Because I think it showed up in Eternia and then just went away until, what was it, this one? Did any of the other ones have retry before this? Not any of the ones that I've played through for Tales of Praxis anyways. And does Legendia? I think that's the only one that I have remaining in the intervening years. Cheria gained the Seraphic Bolt Adept title. Love it. That's fair, Chrissy. I have come to recognize in my older age that cringe comedy is not for everyone. It is definitely an acquired taste, and I am just the kind of degenerate for whom it was meant. So don't worry. I'll filter all of the best jokes to you from it, and then you won't have to deal with the cringe. You can just enjoy the joyful after effects and cultural references. Yeah, so I wonder why it was out for so long. That's interesting. A lot of interesting development tales to be excavated in this series, I have no doubt.
We're coming, Frederick. We will survive. Gotcha.
I really feel like the way his name is spelled, it ought to be Frederic as opposed to Frederick. But they would know. Oh, I'm already out of the habit of this. So, human, strike, and impact. Do we have any of those? Impact! Alright. Shockwave Slash has impact. Okay, so we should just be singing wild and free with Shockwave Slash. Good! Aaron's learning! See, it does happen sometimes. And I do feel like having to learn a whole new Tales gameplay system that I've never encountered before with Eternia is kind of... It's helped to get the juices flowing to just be more flexible and have more neuroplasticity for learning systems in general. Oh, okay. Thank you. I forgot about that. Well, there you go. So it starts out here, and then this is strike. I already forgot what we need to be looking for. So why do I have the memory of a goldfish? Human, strike, and impact. All right. So that's strike, that's strike. They're all strike. Okay. So we just need one that's human, and then if we also do the impact burst art, then we have all of them. So a 2-hit combo of A arts gets us... Oh, and actually, this gets us impact. So we just don't have human. Okay, so we have nothing that gives us human, but see, this is good background to be going through because I have just learned what I would not have known before. For these enemies, unless I'm misunderstanding the way weaknesses work, it is strictly better to just stick with any A arts as opposed to burst arts. Got it. Well, at least we know what to look for now. And see, that seems like a double standard to me, Grail. If you get stoked about making people cringe, but you don't enjoy cringe, like, maddeningly inconsistent. That seemed effective. Of course, she had no HP, but I'll take the win.
Let's keep moving.
Big Moon Echo! Welcome back, my friend. I've been missing you. I've been doing my very best not to miss any skits for you. So if you go back and check the VODs, hopefully you will not be disappointed. It's harder with this one, with them all being tied to discovery points in certain locations, but thankfully Grail's been helping out. Oh, I will also say, while I did order the converter to make the video quality better for Friday, I totally forgot to get a side quest guide up and running, which is on me. So I will definitely own having that ready by Friday. But that said, Grail, it seems like you're already doing a good job of keeping track of this. But if you want to be my extended mind and make sure that we don't miss any key side scenes as we're going forward for this evening, the group village effort would be appreciated.
Frederick, are you all right?
Lord Asbel, I never dreamed to meet you here. I don't deserve your presence after what has happened.
I know about my father, Frederick. You don't need to apologize.
You know what I might do also? I might see if I can turn my lights down a skosh just so... Actually, this might be as low as they get. I think that's a little better. I'm realizing with the game being this dark, which I'm glad that'll hopefully be better on Friday. It also looks like I'm in a spotlight, which might be part of the issue. So hopefully that helped a little bit. Oh, the audio for the game is a tad quiet, Chrissy? Thank you. Let me turn that up a bit. All right. I turned it up a little. Let me know if that's a good balance or if you can't hear me and we can fiddle with it a bit more.
Lord Asbel.
Look, more Fendelian weapons.
Ah, Grail, my hero. I owe you, buddy. Thanks.
When did Fendel get their hands on those?
I don't know, but they're laying waste to our forces.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, feel free to be extra vocal about that. Vocal about side quests, vocal about audio balancing. Want to make this as high quality and overall experience as possible.
Fendel's not messing around. The town's going to be in serious trouble if they get through. We have to stop them here.
We've attempted numerous frontal assaults, but we simply lack the men to combat them.
Then we'll have to get clever with the terrain. Maybe we could drop them off a cliff.
If there's one thing I learned from my childhood, it's that dropping people off of cliffs is highly effective.
A cliff?
The meadow on Lawn Hill isn't far from here.
Love it.
I'll distract the enemy. You go ahead and lead our people to safety.
This is maybe an obvious point, maybe something interesting to keep in mind, but the fact that he has returned as an adult to his home and the source of his childhood trauma, and one of his first impulses is to weaponize his childhood trauma, like directly turning Lant Hill and everything that happened there into a tactical tool against the enemy to use in his role as a knight. There's no accident there.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, childhood trauma is a hell of a drug, isn't it?
You'll see.
I'm gonna give them all flowers.
Hear me, people of Fendel! I am Asbel Lant, son of Lord Aston, and knight of the Windor Kingdom.
Well, you're a cadet, right?
If there are any warriors among you, let them step forward and face my blade!
I guess he's allowed to fudge as a tactic.
That got their attention. Now I just have to lead them to the meadow. Cheria, go with the others. I can handle
I'm
this
so
myself.
glad you said that, Grail, because it's such an unnerving movement pattern to me too, but I thought it was just a me thing. Yes, it is. What is it? It's like they're fidgeting in this almost organic way, but they're machines. Maybe that's it. Very, very uncomfortable. I think that is the question to keep in mind, Pink Moon Neko, right? Because you would think that being able to turn the stuff that happened in your past into something like a tool to use for your present could be a good thing. But also, we have to remember Asbel, at least in one sense, became a knight really to run away from and avoid a lot of that trauma. So if he's just further sublimating that trauma into that role that he used to avoid the trauma in the first place, it could be this kind of negative psychoanalytic loop that's just sort of pushing him further from acceptance of reality and everything that happened.
I'll be fine.
They're coming! Cheria, go! Run for the meadow!
And they're also kind of bouncy, like they're made of jello as opposed to metal. That might be part of it. Ugh, it's just, every one of their move types is so uncomfortable for its own reasons. Oh no, it's a mini game. Why? Okay. Jesus Christ, and now it's having a seizure. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Something tells me we don't want to be interrupted by battles with enemies while this is happening. Fuck, 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 fuck! I'm doing something! I'm doing something!
Let's do this! Okay, you won't live your...
Weak to burst darts and weak against beast. I can remember that. Does he have beast in his assault tree? Or beast types, not beast the art. Already I'm confusing myself. No. And it's none of the burst darts, right? No. Useless. These moves are useless.
Let's keep moving.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. One of the many ways in which it can be easier in New Game Plus. When you can actually move at a human speed. No, come on, I got another one you're gonna love. It's right in your Q zone. You're just one move away from becoming a hero, Asbel. Talk to your doctor if you experience side effects like running back to the same hill that was the seat of your childhood trauma 7 years later.
We're almost there. Yes, we did it.
Yeah, if these tanks are any indication. Definitely seems that way, Pick Moon Neko.
No.
Cheria!
Wow, Asbel. Now our paradise really has been lost. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Not again.
That's my one for this stream. That's my one.
It's all over. I couldn't protect anyone. This can't be happening. No!
At 2x speed, Potter. Oh no! How many I think you should leave references can we make back and forth in the space of like 15 minutes? My girl! How'd she get here? Fucking awesome.
No way.
Sophie?
Reconstituted at the place where she was first discovered. Paradise regained. Alright, now I'm done.
She can't fight them alone.
Come on!
Okay, let's do this. Bear the
Mock! Oh, that's gotta be machine. And impact and paralyze. Paralysis. Okay. What do we got? Machine, impact, and paralysis. I don't think he had any machine or paralysis stuff. Nope. Alright. I kind of prefer Mach. Can we just call all the machines Machs from now on? Which guys are you talking about named Transmurder in Vesperia? That does sound horrible, and I feel like I would remember that.
name and judgment. Ready?
Okay, slash! Fall!
His name and judgment. Ready?
Strike!
Ready? His name and judgment.
Strike! Not yet!
Ready?
You can't hurt me if you can't touch me.
You need the light of lions.
Yeah! There!
Oh, the mechs. Got it. Yeah, I don't think I clocked any of their names, so that makes sense. I mean, the name doesn't make sense, but my not remembering them makes sense. Maybe transistor or something? I feel like it has to be some kind of now unfortunate abbreviation, right? Thanks so much, Grail, for your timely warning, as always. Yeah, Transformer, I feel like, is also a good candidate.
I'll keep
Awesome.
on getting stronger.
Oh, I love that too. Her name right now is Sophie? Speaking about the like the narrative voice of the tutorials and everything else that's been a theme in the beginning of this playthrough, like the fact that it's not yet clear exactly who she is or how it is that she's come to be here. That's a very subtle but cool way of showing that. I love that. I promise I'm not going to make this whole stream about Tales of Eternia, but one thing that just occurred to me too in terms of like rating performance, because so many of the games have the grade system, which is, I think, for people who are familiar with the series, an intuitive way of wrapping your head around how you did, especially once you've played it for a while. But speaking to more of the arcade style of Eternia, one thing that I didn't expect going into it, which is pretty cool, is they give you like an expected average time for each battle. So it's more of like, it's not a time limit, but it's showing how you performed just in raw terms of how long you took to beat the enemies versus how long the expectation was, kind of like par for a golf course or something like that, which I don't want to say like I enjoy that more than grade because I'm so used to these games. I really like the grade system, but it struck me as a surprising and cool way of wrapping my head around a lot of the same performance things that grade oftentimes maps to. Well, you would know all about the harder tiers, wouldn't you, Grail? But I feel like we're doing well so far. So I don't want to say I'm thinking about cranking it up to hard at some point, but I think I just did say that. But we'll see. It's early days yet. It's only what, stream 4, so we've got miles to go. Miles and miles to go. Utilizing effects. Some weapons and gems have effects that add attributes to your attacks. Take advantage of the dualize system to ensure your party has attributes for any given situation. Okay, so it's not just about arts. Sometimes you can also shoehorn in what you need from the weapons themselves. That is very cool and useful to know. Yeah, maybe that's part of it for me too, Chrissy. Just having like a single objective metric is a little clearer and easier to buy into than a grade telling you how the game thinks you did. I feel that. I don't know if that's where you're going with it, but if it is, I can certainly relate to that.
It really is. Sophie.
It can't be Sophie. It's impossible.
And a beautiful theme it is, isn't
Sophie's
it?
gone. She's been dead for 7 years.
Such great music in this game. Ugh. Great music in all the Tales games, but so great in all of their own ways that so perfectly resonate with the worlds and stories to which they inhere.
Sophie?
But is it... has she lost her memory too? Follow me. There's something I want to show you. Hmm. 7 years ago, me, Sophie, and Richard all came to this very spot and swore a pact of friendship. Look here at this tree trunk. Well, do you remember anything?
The quiet, cautious voice acting is great on Asbel's part.
I don't know.
Yeah, I completely disagree with that, Grail.
But just looking at this tree makes me feel somehow strange.
It makes me wonder what you're looking for out of music in a game like this,
Looking at something
if you find
that's
this music forgettable.
very precious to me. So, what does it mean?
Yeah, good point, Chrissy. She's right back to being on the outside of the friendship.
You can't be the real Sophie. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Even still, I can hardly imagine you as anyone else. I mean, you look just like her. Wow. So what happens now? Do you want to come back to town with us?
You make a compelling point, Grail. Oh.
That would be best. It's really dangerous here.
Okay, then let's hurry back. I'm starting to get worried about the others.
Yes. Let's go.
Tiger Festival!
A Sopharia seed? Maybe Sophie is watching over us after all.
Maybe the real Tiger Festival was the friends we made along the way. I also noticed, it's very hard to tell when we're now this far away. I was hoping it would be easier to show this after the fact, but looking at Asbel's back in that scene, it occurred to me that the insignia on the back of his coat, it's a very oversimplified version of it, but I think it has to be sort of a gesture at a lotus flower, which is, a symbol in a lot of different contexts, but especially in the Buddhist tradition. The lotus symbol is a classic icon of the Buddha and enlightenment, which, without spoilers, might be useful for us to keep in mind as we go on from this point. Oh, was there a skit? Thank you, Big Moon Echo. Yeah, the flowers are Sopharia flowers. Oh, a skit at the save point. Got it. By the tree? What the fuck? I thought I just went over there. Am I crazy? I see the prompt to descend to the cliffs. Not seeing a skit over here. But we do have a save point. There we go. There's one.
So, where did you come from? I don't believe it. We know a girl who looks just like you.
I don't understand what you're talking about. Who are you?
It figures.
No, I think this really is.
Sophie died 7 years ago. Face reality. Stop seeing things how you wish they were.
Cheria.
So what happened? How did this girl die?
Well, that's...
She died protecting us. She sacrificed herself because we were important to her. Because we were friends.
This is interesting too. Like we talked last time in the abstract about how Asbel and Cheria are coping with their shared trauma in very different ways, but especially in little moments like that skit, you can see how they're almost coping with it in antithetical and directly oppositional ways. Like Asbel seems to kind of be like retreating into an idealism of following like the honor of the knights and trying to see his old friend and this person who resembles his friend but maybe isn't his friend. And Cheria, on the other hand, is like this aggressively flat-footed realist who just like is trying to stay grounded by seeing like the most pessimistic possibility in everything she encounters in the world. Just, it's not possible that anything good could happen. our friend is dead, your dad is dead, we just have to live with that. And so probably like the healthy path forward is somewhere in between the two of them, right? But for them to be kind of antagonistic to each other at this point and correcting each other without like actually making progress on their own, I think is an interesting way to set off this part.
Okay, let's do this. Ready?
Yeah, great minds think alike, Grail. I think you and I were saying the same thing between my comment and your message there.
That should buy us some time at least, right?
Just gonna also look at Sophie's titles now that we have her. And so, again, notice this is one of the interesting points we're looking at. The little pieces of the gameplay systems and the game design can help us think about the story in some like robust and interesting ways beyond what's being said in the cutscenes. Because there's this open question in the story right now. Is this really Sophie? Is it someone else? Her name is still Sophie with a question mark, if you can see on the top left hand. But she does have access to the titles that Sophie gained in the child timeline, right? So is that evidence that she has retained knowledge of a past that she had? Is it something that we as players, or maybe Asbel and Cheria, are imposing on her? So it's not so much that those titles inhere to this character, but rather that we're projecting them onto her. It's not as if the existence of these titles in her repository gives a clear answer to the question of whether she's the same Sophie we saw in the childhood arc, but it does act as more data for us to consider as we're adjudicating the question of who she really is and how she relates to the broader story. Yeah, I think I'm of the same mind as you on that front, Padre. That was one of the things, I think this has come up on the stream before, but one of the things that Dan and I talked about last year at PAX West when we were talking about Final Fantasy VII, because oftentimes I think people preemptively write off stories, especially nowadays, as just confusing and therefore not good if there are aspects of the plot or things that are going on that are complicated. But oftentimes, and like I would argue, and Dan would too, that Final Fantasy, the original, is a peak example of this. Like, there are moments in the story where things are supposed to be confusing, and the characters are just as confused as the players are, and a lot of the like thematic content of the story is in the working out of what the truth is, and the journey to actually ascertaining like how we think about the world. So I think that kind of shared confusion can be a really nice color to introduce into a story. But yeah, when it's just the characters who are confused about something, I mean, sometimes I think there are good uses of that. Like, you might say from a certain perspective that dramatic irony is predicated entirely on that, right? The notion that there are things we can know as the audience to a story that are not yet known by the characters within it. But I might be a little confused. Are you saying, do you feel like there's an aspect of that that's going on here in Tales of Graces right now? Or like we already know something that the characters don't? I'll take the oath. Yeah, good question, Chrissy. I almost feel like the way that I'm reading it, the arts are less evidence of identity versus the titles, because you might suppose, like, maybe there's someone who looks like Sophie and also has the same behaviors as Sophie, but you know, if she had a twin or she was one of, you know, like a group of people in the same army unit or something like that, there might be explanations for that. Whereas when you think about the ways in which titles are typically gained in Tales games, they're typically associated with particular moments in the history of a person, right? And so while arts might be something that can be used by multiple people and acquired through different contexts, I at least, like the way I intuit how titles work is they refer to a particular moment in history and something that happened with the character. So that would be my read on it, but I think there's certainly more than one reading available to interpretation. Oh, that's an interesting reading though, Pottery, because I mean, and maybe this even kind of goes to the point of the conversation we're having. I do kind of feel right now, like, I mean, I've played Graces before, but putting my previous play of it to the side, I do kind of feel like it's an open question of like, well, this girl was never really fully explained before. Now she's shown up in the same place in a very unclear and kind of mystic context where she just seems to be like constituted by this energy that resonated with Asbel or Cheria, and Cheria, excuse me. So like, is she the same person? Is she not? That doesn't feel obvious to me right now for what it's worth. And I think maybe the mere fact that we can have different views on it reinforces that maybe it's not something that's meant to be mere dramatic irony, but it's something that can confuse us in the same way that Asbel and Cheria have different reads on it, right? Yeah, especially in a JRPG, Pink Moon Neko, I think, yeah, clone situation is a live option to be thinking about or something like that. Well, and yeah, now we've arrived at what I was trying to say about the titles beforehand, right? Like, I think the titles could be seen as great evidence of that. It could also be seen, especially in a game that already has us thinking about what it is to process in healthy or unhealthy ways childhood trauma. Like, are the titles maybe evidence that Asbel or Cheria or the player, or maybe the group of them, are projecting the expectations and understanding of the Sophie character from the childhood arc onto this new character who we kind of desperately want to be Sophie back because we don't want to cope with her death, right? I'm not saying that's what the game wants us to take from it, but I am saying in terms of the way in which it seems to be orchestrating that scene, like that seems like just as much a live option in terms of interpreting what's going on as the alternative interpretation that she has those titles because she just is Sophie from the childhood past. Which would then, and not to interrupt, but just to wrap up on this question, right, Grail? Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on with my green screen. I'm gonna have to try to fix that in a sec. But I think similarly with gameplay, right? There's this notion, a notion that I, work a lot on in my own work, that, the player can be involved in different ways in the game that is separate than the ways in which the characters in the party are involved. And one way in which you might speculate about that in Tales of Graces is this idea of asking the question, well, if the gameplay is something that the player is extending to these characters, like, might the continuity of gameplay here be an expression of the player projecting onto the character and wanting the character to be something that they're not actually, in terms of what is objectively the case? All right, there we go. I had another light on in the background and it was wreaking havoc on my green screen. I apologize for that. Notice we're already talking also about a lot of sort of the philosophical and spiritual questions that I think are important for us to continue wrestling with and frankly arguing about as we continue on with the game. This idea of what is it that constitutes continuity of the self? What is identity? How much are we able to determine that for ourselves versus what is determined by the community around us in terms of how it sees us? Notice that also goes back to a lot of the things we were talking about in the previous streams in reference to stuff like names, right? And how names are given, the context in which they're given, the uses to which they're put. So it's all connected, right? And I think for my 2 cents, to put a button on this and then continue on in the stream, like, I think especially at this point in the story, as we're just getting situated in adulthood, the way I read the story is as it wanting us to wrestle with these things in exactly the way that we are right now, as opposed to having settled answers to them. Because surprise, surprise, the JRPG is going to go on for a while, right? And I think a big part of this journey and why I'm excited to go through it with all of you is that much of the substance of the plot we're going to go through is designed to compel us to wrestle with questions exactly like this.
Everyone make it to safety?
Yes, we're all alive thanks to you. However,
Oh, sorry.
Daddy! My daddy is hurt! Don't worry. I'll help your daddy get better, okay? Where are the injured?
in the town square.
I'm going to go see if I can help.
Cheria has been a comfort to us all.
That is another great question to keep in mind as we continue with this game, Pink Moon Echo. And just to be clear, I'm not continuing to say that's a good question just to pass the buck or to ignore these questions. I genuinely think, and I mean, I think people who have played Tales of Graces will know enough about it to corroborate me on this. Like, these are there's a reason we're already wrestling with these questions, and it's not because we're idle philosophers who like to think about these things in video games. This game, I would put forward, is designed to get us, like, considering this in pressing real-world ways, as opposed to just idle theoretical contemplation. So we should really keep track of these very questions as we go forward here.
It's almost like she's Lon's guardian angel.
What happened to Fendel's army?
They've pulled back, but they're still within Mont's borders. They've constructed an encampment just in front of the border fortress. Unless we destroy that encampment, we'll never be able to drive them out.
Do we have any intelligence on it?
Yes, I submitted a full report to your father.
Good. I'll check it out when I return home.
Lord, your dead dad.
One more thing. Frederick and Lady Carey are waiting for you at the manor.
I understand. I'll go to them right away. "7 years. This is quite the homecoming."
Asbel?
Never mind. It's nothing. Let's go home.
That's a good question, Grail. That's something I've wondered about before too, because I love the name, but I've never heard it in any other context. And this is mostly just free association, but it was interesting enough to me in Aaron's little mind palace that I feel like it's worth sharing, because it hit me on the head when Asbel said this is some homecoming. And I think the idea of homecoming in like the Greek literary tradition is in my head, because one of the early areas you go through in Tales of Eternia is the Nostos Cavern. And Nostos is Greek for homecoming and for the concept of like homecoming as part of an epic voyage of the kind that you get in like the Odyssey, when Odysseus comes home after decades of having fought the Trojan War and then getting fucked with by the gods on the way home, because Poseidon is a dick, basically, I think is the long and short of that. but I'm recalling our early conversations about the idea of, treating people as pets and treating Sophie kind of as a dog. And I'm just put in mind with everything we're talking about in terms of what she does remember and what she doesn't remember, and the fact that her behaviors are similar to the picture in the Odyssey when Odysseus finally does have his Nostos, his homecoming, and he returns home to find his poor old dog who had waited for him, waited for his old master, and kind of lived beyond his years just to see Odysseus and finally be happy and then die at Odysseus's feet, having fulfilled his purpose of waiting for his master to come home. I think there's something like not totally dissimilar that happens here. If you think about the way in which Sophie manifests in the home when Asbel and Cheria finally do have their Nostos of returning to Lant, and specifically Lant Hill. And it is like, you could make something, I think, of comparing a lot of our discussion to the idea of like a dog who hadn't seen her master in a long time, and then he returns, and there's a passing familiarity, doesn't quite remember, but knows all of the old behaviors and the old tricks and the old arts like we were talking about, right? So, like I said, I think that's more a free association than the more sort of Buddhist and conceptual spirit stuff and questions of identity that's much more directly raised by this, which we were just wrestling with. But I think it's sufficiently thematically of a piece with the rest of what we've been talking about that it bears mention.
Asbel!
Exactly. Well, I think it came up so vividly in those early streams for a reason, right, Grail? And I remember one of the things that I had trouble with during my first playthrough of this was sort of keeping the childhood arc vivid throughout the rest of the game, because it's a relatively small portion of the JRPG, but it is also sort of like the foundational myth and trauma on which the rest of the story is grounded, right? So I think the more we can do to keep those early conversations that we had in just the first couple of streams vivid, the more I imagine we'll probably end up being rewarded for it. It's a good question. It is an interesting question to ask.
Hi, Mom. I'm home.
Oh, I missed you so much. I'm so glad you're back. After what happened to your father, I've been so very worried.
I'm sorry I wasn't here. And I'm glad you're all right, Frederick.
I owe you a debt I can never repay, Lord Asbel.
Did I miss the funeral?
Yes, I'm sorry. We simply couldn't wait for your return. Your father fought bravely and died defending his home. I pray that is of some comfort to you.
I understand. Thank you for being there during his final hour.
You are too kind.
Asbel, please. Please don't leave us again.
Oh, this poor
You
woman.
must stay and rule in your father's place. We have nowhere else to turn. That's why you've come back, right?
I came back to see if you needed anything, and assess Lant's current condition.
Asbel, you can't mean to return to Barona. Not after all that's happened.
I know what you're trying to say, but I need some time. I need time to think.
We left your room just as it was. Please feel free to use it as you like.
Great voice acting. I'm glad you picked him out as Law also, Grail, because since you've said that, I've definitely been able to hear more of Law in him. Getting on that Beyond the Dawn hype train.
Thank you, Frederick. Sophie, I'm going to check out my old room. Wanna come?
Asbel,
I'm sorry, Mom.
Oh, I was hoping there'd be a skip. Maybe at the portrait? Oh, a whole cutscene at the portrait.
Dad, we never had a chance to understand each other.
That's a great line. We talked about phrasing back when Malik asked Asbel if there was anyone whom he could choose to protect, or whatever the exact phrasing of that was. This strikes me as another one of those quietly poetic and thoughtfully articulated lines. We never had a chance to understand each other. Like, what a delicate way of capturing the lost opportunity.
If I'd only known how bad things were here. If only I'd accepted my role as your heir. Then none of this would have happened.
That is definitely a spoiler, Grail. I thought about mentioning that, but then I figured, right before Beyond the Dawn, maybe I shouldn't. That's okay, though. Yeah, I think, suffice it to say, without belaboring the spoiler, it would definitely be interesting to do a comparative study of Asbel and Law in terms of how they do or don't deal with similar situations.
What am I meant to do? I've spent 7 years training for knighthood, and now I'm nearly there.
Because in some ways, and I don't want to belabor the point because I don't want to spoil things for people who haven't played Tales of Arise, but one of the things that's interesting to me about it is, in one dimension, Law and Asbel kind of face oppositional situations where Asbel's dad kind of reinforces the standing order of the world by serving as a lord of a kingdom, whereas Law's dad is basically the leader of the resistance that teaches the hero of the story how to overturn the existing world order. So interesting to see the points of comparison and contrast.
I wanted to be strong so I could protect people.
That's also true, definitely.
But I couldn't protect anyone, could I? Not even my own father. And then he died protecting his own people.
Protect. Protect everyone.
You know, it's because of you that I wanted to be strong in the first place.
Seems like there's some kind of memory rattling around in her head.
I mean, sorry. I guess I think of you as Sophie, you know? This is so weird. It's like I've gone back in time.
More time travel that isn't time travel, speaking of that recurring theme.
But I think I know my answer. I think I've always known it. From the very beginning. Thanks. I think you helped me figure some things out. Man, it's been a while since I've been in here. Was it always this small?
Do you mean, is it just too insanely long, Grail?
I brought you some tea, Lord Asbel.
Gonna bite my tongue to not take the obvious Xenoblade Chronicles 3 bait in terms of games that deal with hair length in interesting ways.
Perfect timing, Frederick. Would you please mail this letter for me?
My lord, this is a letter of withdrawal from the Knight Academy.
It's really even, like, technically speaking, it's longer than ankle length, right? Because her pigtails go up before they go down. So if she were to let her hair down, she would be, like, literally stepping on it.
I will become the next Lord of Lant.
Oh, yeah, same brain.
It is my duty as Aston Lant's firstborn son.
Give me back the one brain we share, Pottery. I need it for running the stream. Yeah, that's fair. It's all relative, right? Isn't
I
it?
shall inform Lady Carey immediately. She will be overjoyed.
Sure. Oh, one more thing. I've heard about a report outlining the Fendolian army's encampment.
It's waiting in the study, my lord. Shall I escort you there?
That would be perfect.
They both lose immediately. But everyone wins when they lose? I don't know. I still don't know whether it's a good thing to aim for the avoiding of Xenoblade Chronicles discussion. Oh, I forgot to do the voice. This is, I should really straighten this up. Hubert's desk. It's just like I remember it. I know I mentioned this back when I started Tales of Graces, but one thing that I'm noticing as I play through all the games back to back to back to back for Tales of Praxis is they really do have their own little flourishes in terms of the particular ways in which they represent things like dialogue and how characters interact with each other and themselves. So, like we had a little bit of internal monologue in Tales of Berseria, like we talked about with Magilu's thoughts showing up during our return visit to the Calyx in the post game, but you can see it's really woven into the basic storytelling language of Tales of Graces F in a different way, where these sorts of thought bubbles, they show up all the time in little points of investigation and in the middle of cutscenes and things like that. I noticed something similar in Tales of Eternia, because something that really, I think, as far as I've seen in like the Tales games I've played, only shows up there because it doesn't happen very much in Tales of Symphonia, and it's really not part of the language at all in Destiny and Fantasia, is just characters talking at the same time or talking over each other, both in cutscenes and just regular unscripted bits of dialogue. That's very distinctive in a similar way to Eternia. So seeing those different styles just in terms of like how the games represent communication, and then thinking about, okay, what does it mean to the broader themes of the story that this is the mode of communication, this kind of characteristic of this game? I think we can get a decent amount of mileage out of that too. Like already thinking about some of the themes that we have on the table in terms of Graces and where I recall the plot to be going, I have in mind a few lessons that we can take from why it would be the sort of game that is concerned with the sort of interior conception of the world that we see through thought bubbles. Yeah, I feel like anime and JRPG characters in general also gave me a very unrealistic idea of which hairstyles are possible without inordinate amounts of hairspray and hairstyling. So I feel you there, Chrissy. Can we switch and see that dialogue? I missed that message of yours, Grail, but I would like to see that. So I remember you pointing that out earlier, and we have not taken advantage of it. It's so filthy. She's even harsher than Asbel is. Maybe it's one of those things, because I know sometimes JRPG fashion is explained in this way, and I think in some of the Tales games it is. Could it almost be seen in some roundabout way as an incentive to encourage her to fight in the fighting style she does? Like, is there some logic where, like, she needs to be graceful and fluid with her hand-to-hand and foot-to-foot combat motions so that her hair, like, doesn't stay in the way and has a natural flow about it with sort of the momentum of the way in which she's moving? I feel like, I don't know enough about martial arts, but I can hand wave my way into seeing why that might be an explanation that's available. It's so neat and organized. The opposite of filthy. Yeah, and I can imagine that being pretty hard to maintain the hygiene for in real life too, as you say, Chrissy. Yeah, but that's what I mean, Pottery. I was probably not clear about what I was saying, but like I feel like sometimes I hear explanations for characters in terms of their combat style saying like, I maintain my equipment or my hair in the certain way in order to encourage me to like have certain behaviors in combat, because like I know my hair is going to mess me up if I don't move in the air just so, but if I do, everything will remain fluid and out of my way. You know what it is? This is an example of this, which I couldn't think of before. It's like what Kisara says about her outfit in Tales of Arise, where she has like the open back to her uniform because it's like a reminder and behavioral reinforcer for her to never show her back to her opponents, but always face them head on with her shield. So again, like, that's not to say that's actually how Sophie is making sense of this in her head, but I wonder whether there could be an explanation of it kind of encouraging and incentivizing her fighting style through behavioral reinforcement in the same kind of way. Yes, we also have the alternative explanation of flight tools / wings or whips. Oh, Asbel. Ah, symbolic dog versus literal dog. Versus... Evie's not on her perch. I was gonna show the dog cam. The playful dog's lively eyes seem to be trying to speak to you. Your mother's been caring for me ever since you boys went away. Oh, she's been doting on me as if I were her own child. Woof. But even I find her to be a bit clingy sometimes. That's when I break out the old quick step and slip on out of here. It was a tutorial the whole time. I thought it was just going to be a bit of character development. Just like escaping from a monster. Woof. Oh, man. Oh, and the little doggy bed. All the more moving to me because of the whole Odysseus illusion that was called to mind. There's something here. The name of Asbel's father. Oh, I'm going to bet that is another passcode for a treasure chest. Well, if we find a chest lying about here, we will know to open it with the name Aston. Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, to me, pottery, the difference is just, and why I gravitated more towards Kisara as an example for this, with what I was thinking about Sophie rather than someone like Regal, is with Regal, it's also very much a symbolic enactment of the penance that he wants to do. So a kind of, like, atonement and something that speaks to and relates to his character even beyond his combat style. For Kisara, at least to my memory in Tales of Arise, I don't think it has that kind of symbolic resonance, which is why I was thinking, oh, maybe it's more of just like a practical relationship, encouraging her to behave in battle in the way that she wants to and what she sees as fitting with her style.
It feels weird sitting here. This is where Dad did most of his paperwork.
Yeah, strives to be a protector, but more in a way of, protecting the people she cares about and also protecting people in battle, as opposed to, like, doing penance or inhibiting herself in battle because of that. But maybe that is the same thing. Maybe I'm creating a distinction without a difference the more I'm talking myself through it.
Frederick, do you know if this report is still accurate? It claims we can pass through the seaside cavern beyond Lawn Hill and emerge near the enemy encampment.
And to be clear, we spent too much time thinking about hairstyles, but it is a JRPG. I wasn't saying that's literally how Sophie is thinking about it. I just, the thing that we're talking around right now just strikes me as an explanation that sometimes happens for why JRPG characters have the particular cosmetics that they do. And so I imagine maybe the same thing could be available to Sophie based on what we know about her fighting style. But of course we don't know anything about her psychology, saying that she actually consciously picked that. Well, there's also that, yes.
If that's true, we could use the cavern to stage a surprise attack.
Pardon me, Lord Asbel?
Oh, that's interesting about the beds too, Grail. I was so caught up in Sophie's pigtails, tripped up in their length, that I didn't even notice that. But yeah, that is a good question.
You look at home here. Does this mean our land finally has a new lord?
It does. I know I'm young, but I'll do my best. I hope you'll help me, Bailey.
Did we notice if it also had the 2 beds in the childhood arc? I assume it did, but I don't have a memory of it either way. Yeah, I think the first time I clocked it, Chrissy, was right when he told Frederick, who was the first person whom he told, I'm going to assume my dad's title, and then, like, Frederick immediately started calling him my lord, which was an interesting change. Yeah, good to call that out.
I am yours to command, my lord. Have you heard from the Royal Knights? Will they ride to our aid?
Unfortunately, it doesn't sound good. I fear we fight this battle alone.
I see.
As such, I'm considering how to deal with Fendel.
Ah, no, it was very much a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing.
What are you planning?
We should strike. It's time we went on the offensive. We can use the seaside cavern to stage a night attack on their main camp.
Interesting. Yes, the cavern should allow us to approach the enemy undetected.
We'll split into small units and regroup near the exit. Then, when night falls, I will lead the attack. Ready the men. I want to be there tonight.
So soon?
The enemy is still recovering from today's battle. The timing is perfect. For the sake of Lant, we must not fail.
There's some kind of edge in Asbel's voice now. Have you noticed that? It's almost like, I don't know if he's overcompensating or trying to match the aggression that he feels like the seat of lordship demands. There's something that wasn't there before.
We shall begin preparations at once.
I want to be a part of this fight, Asbel.
I think a lot of it depends on the particular nature of the enemy and the way they fight, right, Grail? And God knows I'm no tactician, but I imagine, at least in the abstract, the idea that the enemy's already tired and unassuming after an engagement, and they know they've wiped out the sitting lord, and they're just hanging out and getting ready. And if Lant historically hasn't been on the offensive and is kind of licking its wounds, it doesn't strike me as the worst idea to kind of try to sneak up on them and catch them unawares. Smoker, that's interesting. There's kind of a raspiness in his voice. I can hear it now that you say it.
I want to help drive Fendel from my home.
Cheria, I
want to go too.
thank you. Thank you both.
Boy, this is a long time, too, to have Sophie identified with a question
As soon
mark.
as preparations are complete, I want to make sure we reach the cavern before nightfall.
I'll be ready.
This has got to be the treasure chest, right? Nope. That'd be too easy. This has got to be the treasure chest. Dad! No, I mean Aston. All divide! Oh, man. We are just swimming in the early game rewards from reading passwords. Oh, Master Asbel, how you've grown. You look just like your father. Yeah, I noticed that too. The other thing I was thinking about, so this part is really interesting to me, and it'll be cool to keep an eye on the way Asbel evolves as a person from here on out, because notice how quickly, and I'm even tempted to say reactively, he's gone from where he was 7 years ago, running away from all his trauma by signing up to be a knight, to now, almost as soon as he's back, and this girl who may or may not be Sophie has shown up and his dad is gone, to just pretty directly and immediately sending a letter of resignation and stepping into the seat of lordship in the home which he'd abandoned, which you might say, you know, his sense of obligation or duty has been rekindled and he feels it's just the right thing to do. The thing that strikes me as more plausible right now, and maybe I'm just cynical, but I also just feel like at this point in a JRPG, someone like Asbel has more growing up to do, is he's almost swung the pendulum to the other extreme, where first he was just pushing everything to the side and literally and figuratively running away from it. Now almost it's like, in a performative way, he's trying to like reenact the past in order to rectify it by saying like, no, I'll take the role of my dad and act as if I've never left and do the things that he wanted to do. And in some way that will like psychically balance the karmic scales and fix everything that happened because I ran away and everything that happened with the death of Sophie, because if she can show up again, then maybe I can undo all of the other scars from my past, which is a different tack, probably not any healthier of attack, but to see the different ways in which he's trying to wrestle with and get his arms around this trauma from his past, I think is really interesting. And different than Cheria too, right? It strikes me as, at least right now, a different kind of growth and maybe a step ahead of Asbel in the sense of her growth, where, remember, the last thing she said to him before he left was, I want to fill the role that these other people had in your life. Something that was, Asbel didn't react to it in a good way, but that was also a pretty, I would say, immature thing for Cheria to be saying to try to replace those other people. Obviously, she meant well and she just really cared for Asbel, but not the way in which to show it or the way in which to approach it, I would say. But to now instead be saying, look, I want to come with you on my own terms because this is my home. I'm a healer. People see me as an angel. I want to be able to protect the things I care about. And for Asbel to just acknowledge her on her own terms and allow her to come with her, I think that shows a certain sense of maturity in Cheria that maybe Asbel isn't quite at just yet. Amazing. Thank you, Grail. See, we're multitasking. We're doing interpretation. We're staying on top of side quests. We're arguing about hairstyles. We're covering all our bases. Hump day! Oh, I see it. Took me a minute. Assorted flowers are a quest item. Flowers picked from the garden of Lot Manor. Bailey has been looking for these. This is Bailey, right? No, this is Frederick. I'm stupid. There we go. Yeah, you feel me, Pottery. You feel me. Alright, we learned a bunch of great stuff from the titles. I was laughing at your comment because I went and I spoke to Frederick, and maybe this is just a sign that Aaron's brain is muddled and he has trouble paying attention, but maybe it also speaks, I'm going to say maybe it speaks to like the intense focalization that this game has on just like the interpersonal relationships between the characters in the party, especially in the childhood arc where they're just more focused on each other than the social relationships between everyone. I don't think I really processed until just now seeing Frederick in the manor and making sense of her after everything that, making sense of him after everything that just happened with Cheria as Cheria's dad, that also like Cheria, who was sort of the odd friend out of the party, was also like part of the family line that was like in service to like the lordship of Lot. And so there's also that like power dynamic and separation of like ruler versus servant class, even in like the families of herself and Asbel. So, which again, like you stop and think about it and it seems obvious, but I think Grail, you made the point on an earlier stream that this game, for all of its sort of socio-political context and everything that happens internationally and with the different power dynamics, it puts the focus on different things than that. And I think it's interesting how easy it is to let little things like that, not so little things like that, slip through the cracks in service of some of the other focuses that are thrust upon us by the narrative. Thank you very much for the flowers, Master Asbel. You don't need to thank me. I just did what I could. Say, Bailey, you wouldn't know what kind of flowers Dad liked, would you? Master Asbel? Actually, I guess this isn't just about flowers. I mean, yes, it makes me sad that I didn't know the most appropriate flower to choose. But honestly, I don't know what he liked about anything. Come now, Master Asbel. In these situations, it's the thought that's important. I think Lord Aston would be happy with any flower that you picked for him. Thanks, Bailey. Would you mind placing those flowers on his grave? Of course. A side quest, wrestling with his dad. One of my favorite types of side quest. And the aftertext is, thanks to your efforts, we'll be able to honor the fallen lord. I'm sure his soul will appreciate it. So do we know where his grave is, Grail? Is that something that we can continue now? Or do we need to just let it lie for the moment? Oh, that's, I mean, I'm more than happy just to dig into this stuff as it comes up either way, so missable or not missable. Nice to be able to do it. Looking at this always cheers me up. What do the others have to say about it? I won't do this for all the little things we can investigate, but it's nice, especially given that we were talking about interiority earlier. It's cold. And Cheria. Cheria? Cheria. There we go. I never get tired of this fountain. It is nice that for everything that separates Asbel from Cheria right now, they can both take quiet and interior comfort at some of the same things from their home, like the fountain. And what a nice way of, like, adding that dimensionality to their relationship, like the similar ways in which they see the world in their home, even at this moment in the game where they're not really willing to share that with each other. That's a great way of showing that. There is, I think, something kind of soothing and grounding about a nice fountain. Alright, got it. We will move on for the time being then. To the cavern beside Northlant Road. Yeah, I think it was last weekend. It feels like an age ago at this point, but we got like 2 days worth of snow. I might have neglected to mention that on Monday, but yeah, it was proper snowy here in Colorado over the weekend. We still have some on the ground. And it's funny because up at altitude, like the difference between sun and shade is radical. So you'll walk outside and where building casts shadow, you will see snow still on the ground. And then where there's direct sunlight, no snow. It's really uncanny at this time of year. Very whack. Yeah. Felt like a short fall here. But things yo-yo in Colorado so much too. I mean, we had that snow and then it was like back to mid to high 60s today with leaves on the ground and most of the snow melted. So then it felt like, oh, surprise, it's back to fall again. I don't know why I'm ignoring the enemies. That's not good behavior.
Victory is ours.
Oh no, not flooding. That sounds serious. Hope you're staying safe at least for all that, Chrissy. Yeah, weather can be scary. Nice to be able to complain about it, but always it can turn so dangerous so quickly. If you want to be a true combat master, that's me! Tell me how, please, game. Hit all of an enemy's weak points as quickly as possible. Once you strike one of them, you'll need to strike the next within a limited amount of time in order to keep the combo going. Alright. Speaking of time trials. Alright, well, do stay safe through that, please. It's reassuring to have you back on our side, Master Asbel. Just wait, we'll have Fendel's forces crying for their mamas in no time. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That just breaks my heart. Yeah, nature can be so unforgiving. Well, I'm glad that you're safe in any event. And my heart goes out to your uncle. Especially you have to put so much love and care and time into tending a garden. That has to be really devastating.
I can't lose. Okay, slash! Roll him down! Gotcha! Okay, die! Gotcha!
Yeah, I think it leaned toward us as I understand in Pikmin Echo.
Won't fail.
I imagine you'll probably be getting it at some point in the next month though, yeah? In Utah. I look up into our mountains now, and it's all white, so I imagine it's even still snowing up there now. I don't really check the mountain reports, but it would be nice to get some snowboarding in this season, so perhaps I should.
Okay, let's do it!
Yeah, my least favorite, really, the more time I spend in Colorado, is the yo-yo-ness of its seasons. It's like, I don't mind hot weather, I don't mind cold weather, but having every other day be hot or cold, it's so hard for one's body to get acclimated and maintain homeostasis. For me, at least. I feel like I wake up every day and it's something slightly different, and so it's really hard to maintain just an internal steady state. Oh yeah, I think the evidence of that is just laid bare and made more transparent for everyone every year, Chrissy. Sadly. And sadly, that doesn't mean there won't continue to be some people who deny it, but yeah, the effects are just devastating. Yeah, what's the generation they call the Doomers? That's a thing, right, Grail? Is that you? Are you one of the Doomers for having grown up in the era of doom and gloom? Or are those unrelated notions? I know I've heard that before.
Sophie, don't wander too far.
All right. Why do you
I'll just go stare at this wall. Oh, Sophie.
I don't know. She needs a name, right?
Even though we have no idea who she really is?
I could call her Rita de Nomos if you prefer.
Look, I'm just...
Or the super ultra brave Charger.
You need to come back to reality. Everything has changed since then.
You're right. It has changed.
Tiger Festival 2.0!
Sophie's dead. My father's dead. Hubert got adopted by some guy in Strata.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about that, Pink Moon Neko, because part of me loves the seasons. The part of me that grew up on the East Coast and the Northeast. But then part of me loves just a mild, temperate, steady state. That's the part of me that grew up in Northern California, where it is always 65 degrees, nice cloud cover, nice breeze, t-shirt all year round, just rains a little in the winter, so depends on my mood. But usually whatever I'm getting, I want the other thing, because we're only human, aren't we?
Oh, and my oldest friend treats me like a total stranger, and has apparently given up on
Ah, the heart of it. Finally saying the quiet part out loud. You noticed, but I was being so subtle.
Look, I know this is all my fault, okay? That's why I decided to stay.
Yes, I recognize. I'm old enough and mature enough to recognize that Fahrenheit and most American metrics are very silly. But I'm also old enough that I've given up all hope of retraining myself to speak in terms of things like Celsius. So you'll have to forgive the Americans among us, Chrissy. I'm aware of it, at least. That's half the battle.
It's a Sopharia.
That's where we got the name Sophie. Sophie. Asbel calls me Sophie.
Sorry, I should have asked you first.
No, it's fine. Please call me Sophie. I like this flower. It feels warm and familiar.
But which system, Pottery? The American system or the international system? All of my measuring cups are in cups, so I can live with that. I do coffees in grams though when I brew coffee.
It makes me happy to be named after it.
If you like it, why don't you grow another one? Here, take this. It's a Sopharia seed.
Yeah, well, you know, if there's one thing Tales of Symphonia taught us, it's that not everything needs to be forgiven. So, if that's my cross to bear, I will bear it.
This will turn into a Sopharia flower?
When we get back to the manor, you can plant it in the flower bed.
All right.
See, and even then, that sentiment of Sophie's, like recognizing the flower and saying it feels warm and familiar and I like it and it's comforting. Like, I at least read that and I feel like it could really nicely support either the idea that she really is somehow the Sophie we knew in childhood coming back, or that she just is a new Sophie who recognizes this kind of relationship and recognition by Asbel and his friend Cheria and everyone else as something that is warm and comforting, and to which she's naturally acclimating in her new life. This is one thing, I don't think this is really a spoiler because I think it's already implicit in what's happening with Sophie and this new character and everything that happened under the tree, and even the notion of these flowers and planting the seed. But one thing to keep in mind with all of this is the notion of kind of, you know, we talked about sort of what makes a person and consciousness and how would you differentiate, you know, from your clone and all these philosophical problems. Like, you pick up your consciousness, put it somewhere else. Is that you? Or you split it or double it? Which you is you? The other thing in line with that is the notion of sort of reincarnation and being bound to past lives or various iterations of yourself. And of course, there are a million different ways you can go with that. But I think one that's useful to keep in mind, especially with what I was saying about the lotus flower, is the notion of samsara and going through sort of different walks of life over the course of human and cosmic history in the Buddhist tradition in order to ultimately achieve enlightenment and transcend the physical realm and bind oneself with kind of the cosmic universe. And I think a lot of the questions that we're dwelling on now in terms of like, what relation does this Sophie have to the previous Sophie, and to what extent is she like drawing on her own experience versus remembering something that's kind of an impression but not distinctly her, is stuff that can be pretty easily mapped to the notion of various lives or iterations over the course of a pluralistic existence.
So this is the seaside cavern. I can't believe I've never been here before.
Oh man, Grail, that point about using that line to beg for forgiveness would have been so great if you could type. You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to put that in my back pocket, and the next time it becomes relevant, I'm going to shout out, "You think I'm going to beg for forgiveness?" And you and I will get it, and everyone else will think I'm having a stroke.
No one has seen us yet.
It's okay. I can barely type on my best day these days, so you're in good company at least.
Good. Let's keep it that way. Now come on. We're almost to the other side.
My God, we're rich.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay, mow him down! Demon thing!
Oh, do you not like the dryness, Pink Moon Neko? I'll say I love the typical dryness in Colorado. The wet, humid heat that just, it feels suffocating to me. I would so much rather just have dry heat. Although I think you get more heat than we do, so that might be part of it. If I had to deal with sort of the intense dry heat that one gets in a place like Arizona, I think the equation would change for me pretty quickly. Oh, Asbel's getting all kinds of titles. Sword drawing tips! Finally! Yeah, that's fair. I think a big part of it is what you're used to. When Asbel draws his sword, it unleashes a hidden power and activates the Iron Stance state. However, he's limited in the number of hits he can absorb in this state. When you see an opportunity to do so, press X to sheath your sword and then draw it again to start the counter all over again. I love that. It makes me want to know what the hidden power is, but hopefully we'll get more color on that as we go on. If you notice this, you noticed how, especially in the adulthood arc, in some of the last few tutorials, they're alluding to these sorts of hidden abilities or bits of background lore, like the way in which the Elith mixer will get refilled based on certain conditions, without giving you direct explanations of why or how that happens. And it heals you. Okay, good to know. Yeah, I have walked away with Hysteria with an appreciation for the way Armatization reinforces a lot of what it is that its game is thinking about. And I think Berseria really only reinforces that in very cool and sophisticated ways. But I think, at least in Hysteria, I do feel like, to me, what I'm seeing right now, and I think this is what you're saying too, Grail, is it's a little more one note, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the Armatus really is kind of the core thematic heart of Zysteria's whole combat system, even though there's so much more going on there. And I guess the idea of getting blessings from the Lord of the Land in terms of enhancing weaponry, but that's very secondary to the Armatus in terms of its impact on the typical gameplay loops of battle. Whereas what we have here in Graces seems to be like I think we were talking about before in a different context, just like a broader plurality of different systems that are lending themselves to different thematic elements of the game in ways that are just intuitive and mesh together in satisfying and accessible and easy to learn ways. Yeah, you're giving me memories already to a lot of drawing and sheathing, and mostly just drawing and sheathing by the end of my my first playthrough of this years ago. Oh, and here we go. Now we have sword sheathing, the other half of the equation. When Asbel sheaths his sword, he can recover some HP, exactly as you were saying, depending on how many arts he has landed and when his sword was drawn, and his current physical defense rating. All right, a lot of contingencies there. Take advantage of the benefits of drawing, iron stance, and sheathing, HP recovery, to make the most out of each and every battle. I want to do that, game. I will try to do that. Without forgetting about all of the stuff we were talking about in terms of weakness exploitation. That's the other big thing.
I didn't think we'd actually have to swim through this place.
I'm all wet.
Are you cold?
If it's too much, take Sophie and head back to Lant.
Don't worry about me. I'm the one who asked to come, remember? Or were you just thinking that maybe I'm in the way? I don't know. Do you even really want me here? If not, you should just say so.
No, I didn't say that. I'm actually really happy you're here. I just don't want to push you too hard. I couldn't stand it if something happened to either of you.
Cheria, you were wet too.
That was a pretty good answer, though, I think. Yeah, I feel you, Grail. The sense of
Wring out my clothes. So turn around.
the sense of measurable and easy progress is definitely satisfying and encourages you to use it more.
You know, there may be other points in this cave where we have to swim underwater to keep moving forward.
Okay.
Let's make sure we don't miss anything. We'll move slowly and carefully. You okay, Sophie? And Cheria, you should be careful not to catch a cold as well.
Hey, don't stare at me like that when I'm all drenched.
Sorry.
He's trying his best.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay.
I think that's all of them.
There is a funny joke to be made in there with the overlap of voice actor between Cheria and Marta, where like, if you imagine Marta being as obsessed with Emil as she was, and Emil just up and leaves for 7 years and then comes back, like Marta going from the obsessed paramour to just the ultimate antagonist who can't stand him. It's all one character, just at different moments in the arc. I'm sure it's probably just psychosomatic because I also understand it to be the case, Chrissy, that doesn't actually happen. But I will say, especially in my adulthood, I have absolutely like gone out in the rain and gotten soaked when I didn't expect it, or even just getting my feet soaked. And it's exactly what my mom always warned me about growing up. Like, I will immediately feel like I get a chill and just feel gross and sick from the inside out. So maybe it's just more of a cultural thing than a physical thing at this point, but I hope I'm not alone in that. Maybe I am. I think it's a thing in one way or another.
No one can stand before my blade.
I think it's a great case, Grail, of that old truism that less is more in a lot of storytelling, but I think you really get that in music. I'll also say, well, let me read this and I'll give another thought about that. Your HP will diminish rapidly when you're poisoned. Thank God, we're finally learning how poison works. I never would have been able to intuit this. You can use a panacea bottle, speaking of that, which we started the stream with, to cure what ails you, or equip a poison charm to prevent infection in the first place. If you're one of those noobs who actually uses things like poison charms. Come on. Put that in the box of accessories I never use, even when I absolutely should, based on the circumstances. The other thing I was going to say about the piano tracks, which I think we have going for us just in the sequence of our playthroughs, is remember, we're coming into this after all of the bombast and larger-than-life epic music of Zestiria, and to a lesser extent, Berseria. Berseria, I think, was a nice middle ground, actually, because while it had a lot of the epicness of Zestiria, it also had a lot of thoughtful piano. Think of Velvet's theme, right? Velvet Crow, great example of that. And so now to see a whole palette of story that is, in some ways, more introspective and quiet, and to see that reflected in the music, I think is a really nice kind of comparative study and just exploration of the full range of emotion and modes of storytelling that's possible through different kinds of musical landscaping of different kinds of worlds that are concerned with different themes. All of these worlds approach what they're concerned with in very Tales ways, but based on the differences in what they're concerned with, that can manifest very differently in all of the systems, from character relations to plot arcs to world structure to indeed the music. Yes, Chrissy, point taken. It is not literally the cold virus. It's something, though. And it comes with a feeling of coldness. And also, to be fair, it's not like anyone is saying, oh man, I went out in the rain and now I have the rhinovirus, right? I feel like saying I caught a chill is not saying you literally caught the virus that is what we refer to as the common cold. Yeah, and I do recognize there are probably those accessories which I should use, even though I don't. I think the only ones that I will actually use, because it's a game-ending status effect, especially in the early games where, as you said, there aren't always easy ways to deal with it otherwise, are just stone charms to avoid petrification. I would argue that it wouldn't be impossible, but it would be very hard to get through OG Tales of Fantasia without using stone charms. Just because there are so many different breeds of basilisks you have to deal very directly with, and they all love to paralyze you. Yeah, a nice coastal area, right? I'm putting in mind of the similar island towns in Tales of Berseria. I'm using the wrong arts, that's why it's not effective.
No one can stand before my blade.
Oh boy. Yeah, and this is when I feel exactly what you were saying about the system rewarding you pretty easily, Grail. Like the fact that we have a title equipped, we're training Asbel with it, he hits another level with the title, and he gains 5 points in his physical attack? Like, that just feels good, and it did not take a lot of effort, and what was required of it felt logical and like a thing that was easy to manage in the natural flow of the story. I am here for that.
Be ready for battle.
This one's very weak to B arts. Right. This one's very weak to A arts. It's almost like there's a method to their madness. Like they're pairing enemies who are weak to burst arts and assault arts in the same battle in order to teach you what the tutorial said earlier about the mechanics of sheathing and unsheathing your blade as a tactic, right? Yeah, I think the tutorials do hit different in terms of their pragmatic approach to getting you to actually understand the systems and graces versus some of the other ones we just played. Yeah, I appreciate it, Grail. I think for now, let's let the titles unfold a little bit, and if it ends up becoming something that is materially hampering us, we can always get a little more direct guidance at that point. But do definitely keep on the side content and missable stuff, because that is huge. And it's almost nice to have you as a co-pilot there, because I don't want to accidentally spoil some of the stuff I've forgotten for myself. So, as long as you're able and willing to help with that, I will gladly take you up there. One of these days, my attacks will hit these damn starfish. There we go.
Victory is ours.
I'm not going to say those starfish are my least favorite enemy type in Tales games, because that would be a high honor on a long list, but between their speed and tiny hitbox, they're definitely up there in terms of enemies I am never stoked to have to deal with.
Okay, let's do this.
It was great to see you, Pink Moon Neko. Always a pleasure when you show up, my friend. Yeah, if you don't come back later, hope you have a great night. We'll be back on the same time on Friday, alright? If you're around and want to kick off your weekend with some more graces. Yeah, and isn't that so interesting, Grail? Because, like, I feel as though for everything we saw and studied in Tales of Berseria, so much of that game is about kind of resonating and connecting with one's emotions and pre-rational and intuitive states, like we talked to death during that stream. And so for the core combat system, for the party to navigate the world and overcome everything that gets in their way, to be unintuitive and require a lot of somewhat pretty obtuse work at times in order to master, like, feels somewhat against the grain of a lot of what the story is wrestling with. And I'm sure there's a way we could talk or theorize or analyze our way into making it align with the story, but at a glance from the way into it we have now, that definitely seems like a challenging and surprising thing to wrap your head around, contrasting it with Grace's.
Sorry about that. Okay. You won't live to regret this. Eat this!
I could listen to them talk all day long.
Yeah, I wonder that too, Pottery. My guess, without thinking about it more, is I would probably agree with you in terms of just the relative genericness of the blobs. Like, random amorphous enemy types are going to be kind of pretty natural filler for a decent number of areas in different worlds, right? And I think even they have some commentary about that in the like the blob Hellion ruins of Zisteria. You remember that? Because we did that during the stream. But yeah, they definitely seem like some of the generic background content against which some of the more interesting enemies are situated. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. That was actually one of those fun moments where just by like memory, like muscle memory, I couldn't tell you what exactly was going to happen on the next screen, but the minute I got to the next screen there, something deep inside my heart said, oh, this is the way where the story advances, which is why I was going to turn around anyways. God, this is beautiful. Glint Soul Colony.
Look, a colony of glint soul bugs. I saw them in one of Hubert's books once.
That reminds me of when you used to come hide out at our house.
You probably don't know this, Asbel, but whenever we did that, Grandpa and Lady Carrie would scold me to no end.
They did?
But Lord Aston always came to my defense. He was always looking out for me.
My father did that? Really?
That's why I was so sad when I'd heard he'd died.
Cheria.
I am glad that we went back to see that skit. Yeah, and we're starting to slowly get more windows into what I was saying a while ago I was hoping for in terms of more background on Aston, right? Like, an interesting and nuanced idea that he seems to think, like Cheria was saying, you know, people deserve kindness and to be treated well and to be understood, but understood within their station, right? Like there was certainly so much of what it was that we were talking about before in terms of wanting to prepare Asbel for his specific role as Lord and the way he treated his son, which probably to him, as harsh as he was not incompatible with the idea of treating his son kindly and in the way that was warranted of a father. And then just with the stuff that, you know, light was dawning on Slow Aaron's head about Cheria's lower station, like treating her kindly in a way that like he felt like she could almost more afford just generic and straightforward kindness because less was expected of her as like the daughter of a servant. Definitely seems like a complex guy, and a guy who probably is going to end up being a cipher in one way or another to kind of the the intersection of some of this class stuff and political stratification of the story in relation to some of the interpersonal and family stuff. If I had to hazard a guess. Alright, we don't have any shattered bone. And that was something that was wanted for a quest a while ago. I don't even know if we'll be able to access that anymore. I'm trying to be mindful about growing and using the Eleth mixer. It is not as easy for me to do as juggling the combat systems, but we've all decided it's very important. And I heartily approve of you identifying yourself now as a Tails intermediate. See, we're all coming along. You are a Tails intermediate. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm glad you're here for it, Chrissy. Especially given your first experience with this game. But truly, like, the deeper you look into these games, I think the more of that sort of nuance you will find, which is part of why I've kept coming back to them over the years, and part of why I wanted to take this glaring a look into them in depth for Tales of Praxis. Because they never come up short. They always show you more than you were expecting, even if you're expecting a hell of a lot. Death glow algae, a poisonous seaweed that feeds by paralyzing its prey. Fish and shellfish are its main targets. Did my use of the word cipher give it away, Grail? I'm excited to go back to Grace's for an article, definitely. It's fun for me now because I have so much love for this game, and as you know, I published very small thoughts on it years ago, but I truly right now have kind of no plan or agenda for what I would want to write about this time, which just gives me so much latitude to sit back and enjoy it and see what it's trying to say, which is a big part of this. Well, because Deathglow, I think I was just delighted by the contrast with the other kind of bioluminescent life that we got at the tree on the other side of the cave. It's just a good contrast. It doesn't take that much to make my eyes light up. You know me. You know what gets me going.
Sophie, wait! Don't touch that!
Why not?
That's a carnivorous sea plant that paralyzes its prey. It may not like people. It's dangerous. Did it bite you?
Just a little. Let's see.
Just a little? Oh no.
It's better.
Good.
I'm glad you were here, Cheria. Sophie, you should thank Cheria too.
Thank you, Cheria.
Oh, of course.
That was cute. In that skit, it felt almost more like Asbel was trying to be a dad rather than the owner of a pet to Sophie. I wonder whether we'll see more of that as he tries to fill in and process the role of his dad as the Lord of Want. It would make sense that he tries to do that not just in a political role, but also in the role of a father and a patriarch. I'm always prepared for fun and scare quotes. Are you kidding me? As we all know, that's my favorite kind of Tales content.
Huh?
Oh! Speaking of blobs.
I'm trembling. Why?
It's a blob who rolled through the blade drifts of Zofir. Okay, so we have Amorphous and Slash and Paralysis and Burn. I feel like Asbel lacks most of those, but he might have Amorphous? No, I was thinking of Inorganic. No, this is Amorphous. Okay, so... And I think Slash was one, right? Slash is also one. Alright, so what I want is... Ha, that's exactly what it is, yep. So if I go up and down to get Stagger Strike, that'll get me Amorphous. And then we want Slash, which is left. That's so specific. Alright. Let's see if Aaron can get that going. So up and then left.
Eat this! Eat this!
I feel like we should handle some of these little ones, which are very weak to ARs.
Eat this!
I'm having so much fun in scare quotes. It's not scare quotes, I'm just scared. Oh, so the reason he says not yet, I suppose, when he sheaths his sword is that he's replenishing his health, so it's like, I'm not down for the count yet. That makes sense. Love it when there's a method to the madness. No one interrupts my surrogate daughter! Why are there so many of them? I'm so fucking sad.
Sorry about that.
This is when I want to use the 1 hourglass that I inexplicably already have on the first real boss in the game, just because I'm so pissed at it. Oh, Asbel doesn't have as much CC as he should have. Well, yes, that is a problem. We'll have to figure that out after this, if we can survive it. Can we just get everyone back up, please? See, this is annoying because I felt like I was doing a good job with managing the system so far, and now I feel like I'm just unprepared. Is that the joke? That my whole party died? Is that the joke? Because that would actually be pretty funny. Thank you, Pottery. That is enough to just instantly put it in complete perspective, isn't it? We all know what that means. Yep, it's not my first try. I'm sure baby Aaron was able to deal with this super easily. I think my problem is that I was paying too much attention to all of the little nerds, and I think they're mostly meant to distract you in this fight, which is annoying because I feel like half the time in boss fights and in Tales games, the strategy is to deal with all of the little annoying side enemies before the boss, and then the other half the time you have to ignore them and just deal with the big bad. Shut the fuck up! You have got to be dead almost. Alright, yeah, you are. Almost. A knowledge check. But see, I hate that term, Grail, because I've heard that before too, but that just makes me feel like I'm dumb if I lose the fight. And I don't like feeling dumb. And now the real joke will be that after killing the boss, it's all the little weenies who eliminate us. Oh my god, leave us alone. Yeah, I feel like your strategy is probably better, Chrissy, because oftentimes the little ones just keep spawning as they do here until you deal with the big bad. Yeah, that would be nice if they all automatically died. But these blobs have too sheer a force of will. Alright, well now we know we have to deal with CC for Asbel next. Alright, can we at least keep Sophie alive for the end of the fight so she gets the experience?
I'll keep on getting stronger.
Well, I'm happy we won, but I don't feel great about it. W's a W, I suppose. And we got a lot of skill rewards from the titles, which is nice. And Asbel gained a new title, Dual Impact Adept. It is nice that using the arts gives you titles that acknowledge that then allow you to further improve the arts. That's another really tight gameplay workflow that I can get behind. If you fight with great skill... See, I feel like the game is just insulting me by talking about fighting with great skill after that performance, which was so much fun, now that I can use one of my hands for scare quotes. You may be able to acquire even more titles, so always give it your all in battle, even against weaker opponents.
I wasn't expecting something like that here. We'd better be careful.
Oh, I see. So we just went after her too quickly and overwhelmed ourselves with the littles. See, and you never know exactly how the big ones are going to play it in fights where smaller ones spawn. But I suppose that is part of what makes it interesting, and something to learn.
I don't see the Fendilians anywhere. Let's stay here and wait for our men to arrive. It's almost time. Follow me, and let's commence the attack.
That's something too. I don't know if it's as interesting as the interior monologue, but something that I've noticed in these first few sequences of Graces that I haven't really picked up in any of the other games I've played and replayed for Tales of Praxis. The like the waiting sequences, like the one we just saw, and the similar kind of time-lapse waiting sequence when the party was waiting for Richard to show up at the end of the childhood sequence to go through the sanctuary with them in the capital, and he never showed up. When they're just standing and waiting around and nothing is happening. Again, I don't know how remarkable a thing that is, but that's kind of something in the cutscene and plot progression language that I haven't seen elsewhere. Yeah, that makes sense, Grail. Well, we got there. And the game is nice enough to fully heal us afterwards. I like that. Okay, so help me out. Maybe this is my real knowledge check. So what were you saying, Grail? Is there a way for us to increase Asbel's CC now? Or is that something we have to do with just getting him better equipment at a store or something? Oh, well, maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just that I never gave him a better sword. So that already has given him one more to his max CC. That's something. Might as well give him the paralysis charm since that's all we have. Are there any similar improvements we can make? Oh, wow. Yeah, well, okay. Boy, this is kind of embarrassing. If I'd actually checked the equipment at any point before that boss fight, I think we would have had a much easier time. Life's a fucking funny thing, isn't it? There we go. Dualizing. Alright, so that's... I also probably need to just get in the habit of doing that more aggressively with equipment whenever we pass shops. Because I know we have passed shops during this run where I've just thought about, oh, is there anything for us to buy? And I need to remember that is also where you dualize. I don't think we've really gotten many shards, though. Which I think is what you need to dualize equipment, right?
Mow him down! You won't live to...
That should buy us some time at least, right?
Oh, a missable skit back the way we came? Like at the last save point or something? Should I go back? Oh, well, Asbel's not going to let us go back. That bums me out. I think we have to cut our losses with that one, unfortunately. Asbel's interior monologue is working against us.
That was hardly worth dirtying my blade.
That actually is a consolation, Chrissy. Thank you. Maybe that'll help you to actually finish the game? Maybe? You never know. It's a pretty big get. Oh, and we can't, can we get the mixer to generate shards? I just thought of that. Doesn't look like they're on here now. No. That would be too easy. That's true. There is definitely an overwhelming amount of content, even by JRPG standards.
That monster was horrible. Do you think it was part of Fendel's defenses?
I'll be crossing my fingers for you, Chrissy.
I don't think so. It's probably lived down here for years.
So it would still be alive if not for us. That's kind of sad. I feel terrible now.
Maybe, but it was either
Yeah,
us
I don't think we
or
do.
it. And we have to save Launt.
Asbel.
There's no time for pity. I'm the only one who can protect Launt now.
Yep. Trying to make up for his past. Cool to get his thoughts even in a skit context, too. Surprise, motherfuckers!
There's no one here. What's going on?
Lord Asbel, we've been undone.
Oh no. That's the worst thing for us to have been.
What happened?
The enemy has staged their own sneak attack. They're advancing on the town as we speak.
Damn. It's almost like an 18-year-old was not the expert tactician who should have been guiding all of the movements of a lordship against an enemy nation.
What?
Well, and it's kind of fitting, right? Because this whole cutscene is kind of demonstration of the knowledge check for Asbel. Like, oh, the cadet knight is maybe not ready to lead an entire army against another army. This is great, though, and another case of what we were talking about in terms of, like, the interpersonal lens of the story versus the, like, political lens of the story. Because, I don't know about you, I got kind of drawn in with the idea of, oh yeah, Asbel has grown up, he's a knight, he wants to take responsibility for everything, he's got this great idea. I was speaking in defense of the tactics back when we asked about, like, well, is it really a good idea? And then it's like, back to reality. Oh, he's actually a kid who's just trying to figure out a way to make sense of his own past without any real conception of what the best strategic move against another army would be.
We must have passed each other in the night. Unless they knew about our plan all along.
Damn it! We can't stay here. We have to fall back. The town's nearly defenseless. They'll be overrun in no time.
Get to Lant at once. We'll keep guard over here. Now I just want to get to a shop to see if we can improve our kit through dualizing, since I'd forgotten about that.
Okay, let's do this.
Sure, we won't have to wait too long.
Slow him down! Slow him down! Not yet! Eat this!
I could listen to them talk all day long.
Yeah, but I mean, the way I read it, at least, Grail, is like, if Asbel was thinking he was being sneaky and leading everyone through this cave under the cover of night and also out of sight of their forces, it would be pretty easy and almost kind of comical for the enemy's forces to just go around this path. And if everyone else was just winding their way through the cave, like, I could see how they wouldn't be noticed.
I can't lose! Slow him down!
Yeah, the cave entrance technique. Right, so I'll go back and make sure we've got that. It's nice that it shows you which of these you've hit. I don't think we have any recourse for hitting Beast or Burn right now. But nice to see that we hit Strike.
Yeah, slow him down! Slash! Fall!
Gotcha. No one can stand before my blade.
Okay, let's do this.
Slash! Slash! Die! Fall! Fall! Demon bag! Demon bag! Gotcha!
That should buy us some time at least, right?
There you are. Got to save in too. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a you problem, Grail. Once you see someone as Leon, it's hard to unsee it. Oh, that kind of... Ugh. Now I'm just thinking about Asbel and his dad versus Leon and his dad. It's giving me all sorts of discomfort. So can we dualize any of this stuff? Do we have... Oh, we have a bunch of shards. I'm just dumb. I just haven't been noticing when we got them. Oh, this is exciting. This adds a maximum CC boosting effect. Ooh, this adds CC restoration when you evade? I'm enjoying trying to time the evasions. That's not that I'm the best at it, but that does sit well with me. So why don't we try that? You're just a big old Leon fan, aren't you, Grail? I'm sure I have no idea what that's like. Yeah, I like that too, Pottery. It's fun to think about that in contrast with something like ruin befalling the hometown at the beginning of Tales of Symphonia, because, as you said, that happens right at the beginning of the game, so a very different and more standard feeling. And also, even though it's like, it's kind of the fault of Lloyd and Genus, it's also really, you know, meted out as punishment for something good that they tried to do that didn't really have any relation to anything that should have happened to the town by the designs, Whereas this is very much just a case of Asbel being kind of outclassed and outmaneuvered by an enemy, which gives it a very different flavor. A Creus attack boosting effect, defense, evasion. Let's give Sophie a CC boosting effect. Oh, that's a great term, unshitting a situation. I love that. Well, yeah, let us know how that goes on Friday, Chrissy. I hope you get progress there. Yeah, there's a lot of good Persona stuff in the water right now, so God knows it's a good time for it. Yeah, but you can't not count the childhood arc, Grail. That's what I've been fucking saying for the last 4 streams. I know what you mean, though. But I do feel like it hits different. Right, yeah, totally, Pottery. I think that's what I was feeling too. It's like it's the difference between it being like the fault in the sense that like the actions of the main character catalyzed a reaction by someone else versus it being the fault of the main character in the sense of it being like a gambit that the main character deliberately undertook and lost, right? Which I think it makes sense to me that we get the more standard experience of it happening early in JRPGs with it just being a reactionary fault of the main character, because so often JRPGs are set up in the beginning where the characters don't really know enough about the world to like make an informed and cogent plan or a gambit which they could lose, which is maybe part of what's interesting about sort of the structure of childhood arc versus then adulthood in Tales of Graces, because despite the shit I was giving Grail, this is the beginning of kind of this context and this moment in Asbel's life. But because we've seen him go through things in his childhood, which are now a memory, he feels like he knows more than he does, and so he's exactly the right kind of character to undertake a foolhardy plan that goes wrong and gets a lot of people in a lot of trouble. Oh, that's awesome, Grail. Yeah, I think they might have said that in a tutorial, but I definitely didn't process it, so awesome. I want to get us back to Lant before we wrap up the stream, but we will we'll make an effort to do that next time. I'm sure that'll help boost us further. Oh, Jesus, is he dead? I'm sorry, Master Asbel. There were so many of them, we couldn't even slow them down. Jesus. So much worse for NPCs in this situation to be dying rather than dead.
Okay, let's do this. Draw, mow him down. Draw, slash, fall. Great job. Yeah, win. You won't live to regret this. Yeah, victory is ours.
I love that you brought that up, Pottery, because that's one of those questions where before I started Tales of Praxis, I would have said no. But now that I've been doing Tales of Praxis for quite a while, I will say yes, because I really feel like even in the games where I truly did not expect it to have an interesting answer to why it's called what it is going into it, the more I've thought about it and reflected on it, the more I've found interesting answers that really do seem like the title is justified in interesting and cool and illuminating ways. So that can be something good for us to keep an eye on. With this and future games, yeah, let's ask ourselves, given that it's called Tales of Graces, by the end of the game, do we feel like that's really an accurate and interesting and illuminating representation of the game and the story? My reasoning for Zestiria is that you picked the exception that proves the rule, because I think that's basically the only case in which I haven't really thought through something good. But even Berseria, like I think that was one where similarly I had lumped it in terms of not being something that feels meaningful, but the more time I spent sitting with it and thinking about it, I don't know if I said this during the stream, but it strikes me as very fair to see Berseria as a corruption of the term berserk. And I think that has a lot to do with the sort of emotional range and resonance with kind of the more primal content of the characters that the game is concerned with. Zestiria, I mean, the illusion that Arise itself makes in terms of the meaning of its title is like a zest for, I think, for life, is what it alludes to in the keys that you get as part of the EX dungeon in Tales of Arise. And I think you could say that. I don't think that's totally vacuous or forced, because a lot of the essence of Saray, I think, does have to do with a certain zest for just like diving into your dream and being excited about venturing through the world. So I don't think it's a totally illogical title. I do think it's one where you have to really want to see it and dig into it further to justify it than a lot of the other games. Yeah, we said the same thing about Berseria. It didn't feel obvious for me going into it, but I got there.
Damn! They're already here! Oh no.
You have to bring it up early so that then we can all be thinking about it through the playthrough, though. That's the challenge, Grail. Just have to open your mind to the thinking as opposed to arriving at the conclusion right away.
They're not from Fendel.
Oh no! I knew that face.
Wait, they're from Strata.
It's blue! From Pokemon? No, not that blue.
Men, spread out and attack. Drive the Fendelians back.
I agree with that. I think Symphonia wants to be more of a metaphorical symphony, which I think is easy to read into, but if you go into it thinking about Symphonia in terms of music,
No way.
I think you're going to be disappointed, definitely.
Hubert out there? Hubert!
I expect the best from everyone.
Fall! Fall! Die! Demon
Demon Flare shot!
Yeah, I don't know enough about music theory to be especially useful there, Pottery. My intuition would be, I feel like the reason that I like Symphonia more than Harmonia,
Indeed.
which doesn't speak to, you know, what would be more immediately intuitively accessible, but just in terms of how I think about the story, is like, I think about harmonizing as sort of putting two different things into like a consonant relationship with one another, whereas a symphony, like that's a single musical object that has multiple constituents, right? And I think, to me, like, part of the compositional aspect of what you go through in Symphonia is like, it starts out as two worlds, you wrestle with the relationship they're in, you try to help them figure out what they are on their own terms, but ultimately you create a single world that is like one unitary object, right? Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing to wonder about, right? Like, is the title better suited to saying, like, where the story arrives at the end of the day, what the characters are wrestling with through most of it? I think there are certainly different philosophies you can spin out in terms of what kind of title you want to highlight what kind of meaning in the game and the story. Yeah, I'll bet it was fun, Grail. Pretty easy on normal mode, though. So. Yeah, also a fight that would kind of not make any sense on your own. Yeah, I think I'll also say, like, and you know, we'll see how Graces evolves over the course of the game, but at least for me, and it seems like this is what the group is driving at. Like, I think of the expression "keeping one in your good graces," right, in terms of like having a prosperous and like kind and understanding relationship with one another, and that seems to be something that's useful and on point to keep in mind in reference to a lot of what we've even seen so far. I know, Chrissy, I feel that same way you were talking about with your colleague every time someone who is really thoughtful about music contributes to With a Terrible Fate. We've had some great music articles over the years. The Earthbound one is still a favorite of mine. I don't know if I've shared it before, so just while we're talking about music, whether or not you're an Earthbound super fan, very cool article, especially if you're interested in musical stuff. But yeah, if you search for music on With a Terrible Fate, you'll find a range of articles. This is the first one that comes to my mind.
Hubert, it's really you! You came back!
Lieutenant, the enemy has been driven out!
Lieutenant? Wow, Hubert, you're really going places.
Oh boy, someone else from my past who doesn't want to talk to me. It's a day that ends in Y.
Good people of Lant, do not be afraid. The men of Strata have driven the Fendelian army from your town. If you are wondering why we have come to your aid, I can provide an answer.
I don't know whether to read that as comforting or disappointing, Chrissy. I could see it going either way.
I am Hubert Oswell, formerly of the Lant family.
The hero formerly known as Hubert Lant.
I am the youngest son of Lord Aston, who tragically lost his life in your defense.
It's Master Hubert!
You've returned to us at last!
While I am now a man of Strata, I still hold my homeland in the highest regard. When I heard of your desperate plight, I was compelled to come to your aid. And I have further good news to share with you all.
While we're talking about music, by the way, notice what a stark contrast this track that we have here, which is all heroic, and to use the same word I used with Hysteria, bombastic, how starkly that contrasts with the quiet, introspective piano that we've gotten through a lot of the story so far. We've talked about how Asbel and Cheria are coping with their trauma in very different ways. And now, granted we've only had a few moments of him, but it seems like Hubert has taken yet a different tack to grapple and come to grips with that past, that of becoming this kind of stately hero and someone who's able to decisively come in and take charge of the situation under his own terms, rather than what Asbel or Cheria has been doing to cope with it. And the music, I think, is as useful as anything in underscoring that.
Strata and Windor have formed an alliance against the cruel nation of Fendel. Your fight is ours, and we shall work as one to drive our common enemy from this land forever.
Yeah, that strikes me as a good counter.
The lieutenant has many matters that demand his attention. If you desire an audience, please wait until morning.
Wow. Shut down by his own former brother's current aide.
What's up, Sophie? Oh, I see. You're planting the Sopharia seed.
When will it bloom?
This is maybe so obvious that none of us felt like it was worth calling out, but I'll confess I hadn't thought of it until right now. Speaking about names and identities across time, how about the whole idea of calling this new girl, who may or may not be the old Sophie, the name of this old Sophie whom Asbel believed to die and with whom he had the special personal attachment, in relation to everything we just spent like 100 hours studying in Tales of Berseria, with Velvet doing the exact same thing with number 2 and Laphicet, her brother, right? Obviously not the exact same thing. There are certain differences that we could tease out, but really interesting to see that same kind of model of naming someone who is kind of new and kind of not, and spiritually connected, but maybe not quite the same person, after someone to whom one had a special attachment in one's earlier life, as a way of breathing a certain context into a new relationship.
It should sprout in a few days and bloom sometime after that. And if you continue to take good care of it, you might even get to see a blossom gale.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Grail. I don't want to keep people too long, but if we're happy to hang out a couple more minutes to see the interactions with Hubert, yeah, happy to end on that note.
It happens after they bloom, if the flowers bathe in starlight for a few nights. Or so I hear. I don't really know the details. Anyway, just be patient and take good care of it. Hubert, are you done working today?
More or less.
Look at you. A lieutenant in the military at such a young age?
Oh, speaking of colds, right? Oh, I hope it's not too bad, Chrissy. Hope you get better soon.
I never thought I'd see you again. Not like this, at least. You saved us, you know. You saved Want.
We're lucky the town wasn't damaged further.
Everyone's just shutting Asbel down.
So how long are you staying? We should catch up, you know? I could use your advice on a whole bunch of things.
I'll be here for quite a while.
Really? That's great. You can help us figure out what the enemy's going to do next. I'll feel a lot better knowing that we're working together.
The resemblance is uncanny. Her movements, her body, even her expression. She's like Sophie in every way. I will investigate this matter personally.
Whoa, hey! Wait! That won't be necessary. I'll decide what to do with her.
So, the boy who abandoned his family now thinks to be Lord.
What?
Stop it. Both of you.
Dads, don't fight.
We have more important issues to discuss. Meet me in the study when you're ready.
I need to talk to Hubert. Are you okay here?
I know the sweet spot for me, which I can achieve, but I know that not everyone can, is when you feel badly enough that you can't really do anything, but you still feel well enough that you can squeak in the things that you enjoy. It's a special liminal space where you can feel like a kid and just take a fun sick day. But certainly not every sick day is like that. All right. To the manner of the study, then. I think this is the study, right? Did I say the manner of the study? I meant the study of the manner. Whew. This is the problem. I can push the stream, but can my brain push the stream?
There is an important matter that I neglected to tell the townspeople. As part of the bilateral alliance between our nations, the Straughton military will be permanently stationed in Lant. I have been appointed military governor, and will handle all affairs of state from this point forward.
I'm your real dad now.
What are you talking about? I wasn't informed of this.
It was a term negotiated directly between the governments of Strata and Windor. Let me ask you something. What exactly do you hope to accomplish here? As of now, you're completely dependent upon my military.
Oh, the fucking dialogue cut out again. I might see if I can boot up my other disc and see if we can get through a stream without this happening on that disc, because I can't see a world in which this is due to anything besides that. But I'll just read until it comes back. What Lot needs now is power, strength. This is something I possess. I hope it comes back.
As a
There it
commander
is.
in Strata's military, I can bring peace and stability to this land.
Yeah, you would think. It's just that I used the converter for the Dawn of the New World stream, and we never had this issue. And I used the same cord I'm using from the system to the converter for my Eternia and other like lo-fi playing on my TV, and I never have the issue. So that's what has me concerned. It might be the disc.
I've spent the last 7 years studying and training. I've sacrificed everything to achieve what I've become. I'm not you. I didn't forget my home and my people so I could go gallivanting around the countryside.
Man, not a lot of love for Asbel. At least second Sophie kind of likes him. That's something.
You don't know what I went through. You have no idea what it's like to train at the Night Academy.
Then perhaps you'd care to show me what you've learned. Here is my proposal. If I defeat you in combat, you will leave Lond.
Good old-fashioned duel. You haven't had one of these since Velvet and Eleanor.
If I lose, I will recognize you as the rightful lord.
And if I were to decline?
Are you nuts? I'll never agree to that.
Then run. Run like you always do. It will prove the last 7 years were about nothing more than your own pride.
Fine. Let's see if my training was just one big ego trip.
He's probably... I mean, I imagine we're going to see this play out through a lot of the remaining story, but my initial read of this before we have any more context is it's like, remember, this poor kid was the second son. He was shuffled off and basically repatriated into a new family in a new kingdom. So totally displaced from his homeland and sense of self. And it seems like he's kind of built up his former brother as sort of the person responsible for all of that. And so has kind of gotten through and built his own status in life in the last 7 years through a chip on his shoulder in terms of proving his own identity and the fact that he's more competent than the one who was just designated by birth order and birthright to be the lord of the land, only to then refuse it and walk away.
I'm glad you've accepted my proposal. But I warn you, I'm not the boy you knew 7 years ago.
Hubert!
Another great track.
Tiger Blade! Mow him down! Gotcha!
I was wondering whether I should draw attention to that myself, but I had faith, Pottery. I had faith. Oh my god. Is this even a winnable fight? I have a feeling I'm not going to, but I also have a feeling it's probably the kind of fight you could win on New Game Plus or if you were more competent than I. Yeah, that's right. The Samurai! Bro.
I failed everyone.
God damn it. I didn't like it.
Hubert, you've grown strong.
Thank you, Grail. That knowledge makes me feel a little bit better, at least.
I told you, I'm not the boy you knew.
I'm super cool and strong now, and I never wet my pants.
As per our agreement, you will leave Lond. Now.
And you will wet your pants. Per the addendum to our agreement. It's in the fine print.
Hubert, what is this? Asbel left the Night Academy to take your father's place as the next lord. I finally get both my sons back, and now they're at each other's throats?
Last I checked, you have only one son.
And I'm legally your boss now.
What are you saying?
I am an Oswell.
Hubert, your father was only thinking of you when...
Enough. The two of you abandoned me, and that's the truth of it.
Yeah, so this is like the more color we're seeing on Hubert now, the more it kind of constitutes a really interesting trinity between Cheria and Asbel and Hubert in terms of the different approaches to past and sense of home that they took in order to sort of cope with the loss and the trauma and everything that they went through as kids, with Asbel running away, Cheria trying to protect her home and basically build back up her sense of belonging and the ecosystem of Lant. Everyone knows her there as a protector. And Hubert, in this kind of authoritarian way, kind of trying to erase Lant and that sense of home and replace it with, you know, his capacity to dominate under his own like new family seal and as this kind of foreign invasive presence, right? The idea that like, oh, if you abandoned me, you ran away from me, I don't need you, I'm better than you, I'll rewrite my own history. A little bit of the flavor of hegemony that we got in the Abbey and everything that they did in the Desolation back in Berseria.
No, please don't.
He's definitely fighting an uphill battle in it, Pottery. No
Don't
argument
worry, Lady
there.
Carrie. I will not force you to leave as well.
Yeah, the swords in that one shot could have been like his second stage JRPG final boss form. This poor woman, I'll say it again, God. She has had a horrible go of it this stream. And the past 7 years, but especially this stream.
Asbel.
Another great piano track. Well, it's interesting to think about, right, Grail? Because like we talked about, Asbel kind of sealed his own fate, where you might say it's his fault, but his choice also kind of precluded him from coming back in the way that is symbolized by his lack of receiving the letter because he was on duty. And Cheria, like, she's strong now, but she's almost strong to her own detriment, right? In the sense that she's hardened her heart against a lot of the relationships that meant the most to her when she was young, and it doesn't seem like she's cultivated any similarly vulnerable relationships with anyone else. And Hubert obviously has all his own stuff like we've just seen, right? So I think it's an interesting portrait of them sort of all making themselves suffer through the different coping mechanisms that they enact. But yeah, completely agree. I think in terms of what it was that set this up for Hubert, in terms of other ones, like he had, well, I don't want to say he had the least agency over it, because it's not as if Cheria's illness was her fault or she had any doing in that either. But yeah, he was definitely sort of the most pushed around as a pawn, and so perhaps the most inspired for that reason to then make the leap to becoming as authoritarian and in charge of his own destiny and corner of the world as possible.
You can't come with me, Sophie. Not this time. Go find Cheria. She'll take care of you.
Hey, quit blubbering and go!
Asbel, Hubert, how did this happen?
That was also kind of a dog-like moment with Sophie too. Not to belittle her character, but just in the very genuine way that like a dog just has this unconditional love and affection and loyalty for, like, where else am I gonna go? I want to follow you. I feel safe with you. You're the context through which I understand the world, which is true in terms of her relationship with Asbel right now, right? Regardless of whether or not she's old Sophie, like he's her tether to her whole system of situating herself in life.
It's going to rain soon. Let's get inside.
I'm not weak like I used to be, Grandpa. You don't have to worry.
I always worry about you, no matter how healthy you are.
Everyone changed. It's all different now.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, Grail, right? Yeah, you think I'm a forgettable second son? I'll show you. Second son, more like second blade.
Such is life. You just keep changing with it until you find the right path. When times are trying, you mustn't fear to face them.
Grandpa.
Oh, young masters, why did it come to this?
I love that idea too of just like a support character in every sense, an NPC, a servant, but someone who is just so quietly zen and satisfied with his place in the world and his trajectory in the relationships that matter to him, that he's able to offer that kind of just genuine, unassuming guidance to everyone who passes through his life, including his granddaughter. Something really touching about that portrait of an NPC in Frederick. Well, that too, Grail. That too. Well, not just the typical exiled from your home JRPG arc, but exiled by your own brother. My God. And we're ending on another really melancholic and moving piano track. This game, it is really just adding layer upon layer of new tension and antagonism built upon that foundational trauma. As I mentioned and as we talked about over the course of this stream, it's going to be so easy, especially as the weeks pass for us, to sort of downgrade or set to the side the childhood arc of the game because there's so much more, which is great. But especially in these early stages, I think it's going to be really useful for us to keep in mind and remember every time one of these new conflicts is happening, especially between Cheria and Asbel and Sophie and the other people from their childhood, it's really like those are just built step by step and layer upon the foundation of that initial trauma that they shared in the catacombs and all of the events surrounding that and the aftermath of it with what happened with Aston and Asbel leaving and Hubert being traded to another family for all intents and purposes. So we're gradually regathering the initial members of the party, but under some very different circumstances. I don't know if it's right to say that there are some fences to mend or just that there are some new relationships to build from Jump Street, which, as I say, it might be one of the interesting mirrors between what's going on with the kids and what's going on with Sophie, right? Is it more about reestablishing an old relationship with someone we used to know, or more about understanding and building a new relationship in the current context? Or maybe it's a little of both. I imagine, like I was saying earlier in the stream with the philosophical questions of identity, these are going to be the sorts of questions and key considerations that we want to come back to and continue to dwell on in the subsequent streams here. Yeah, it's interesting though, Grail, because I feel like in many other JRPGs that would be the case, but I was struck by how, unlike a lot of other JRPGs, it seemed to be that the townspeople were really eager and willing to accept Asbel back as the rightful lord who had left, but now he's back, the prodigal ruler. And so I do wonder whether, had Hubert not showed up, even if the town had been attacked by Fendel, would they have looked to Asbel for more guidance? Would they have followed the existing structure? Or would they have rebelled? Maybe they would have, but it strikes me as, given what we know about the rest of the world and its political structure right now, more likely than not that they might have gone along with him. Friendships are eternal, and also it's like, it's kid time, right? It's a lot of that magic, which again, like, colored a lot of the early stream. That whole, the near quote that I threw out more than once, "You and I are friends now." Like, I think that is part of the authentic magic of a lot of childhood friendships, right? It doesn't take that much. It doesn't need to be that long, but it can be that enduring in terms of its emotional content. And I think it's a nice structure for that in this game too, right? Because they don't know her for that long. We don't see the childhood arc for that long in comparison with the length of everything that comes after in the adult arc. And yet, I think it is right to say that it's the emotional heart of a lot of this. It's why so much of psychology, too, goes back to childhood and things that we go through as kids, right? It's formative in the way that it is in this game. And in the sense that I was referring to quite a while ago, and I said that I really admire this game for the way in which it represents trauma, and especially childhood trauma, in a way that you don't often get. My 2 cents for now. I'm sure we're going to have more to it to say and think about it as we go on here. Well, more like adolescent time than kid time, right? It's all relative, especially at that age, right? That's one of the things that's remarkable, right? I mean, that many difference in years doesn't make that much of a difference when you're, going on your, 30s or 40s or whatever, but especially when every single year and every single month is almost a different developmental stage earlier in life, it can be a pretty radical difference, which is interesting to see crystallized here, I think. All right, my dear friends. Well, it definitely gave us plenty to think about, and all of these various apertures that we're dwelling on, I'm confident, are going to open up even more for vigorous discussion as we continue here. I'll say, too, this is a fun one because I don't know if it's something particular to Tales of Graces or if it's more to do with the fact that we've just spent time thinking about a number of different games together in the real-life JRPG party and live book club context at this point, but it does feel like we're getting into it a little bit more in terms of how we're feeling about these different characters, what they're going through, what we're seeing in terms of the questions that are raising. It's a good kind of game, I think, for getting into not arguments in the negative kind of internet speak sense of arguments, but arguments in terms of what we get in JRPGs, like passionately trying to scrutinize the truth of the matter in terms of what is at the heart of the issues these stories are wrestling with, what they're thinking about, and the meaning that we're drawing from it, and how our meaning and experiences with it juxtapose and inform the experiences of others, which I know this is old news to you, but that's a big part of the magic of why we're doing this, and why I think it's a special thing to think about. Yeah, there you go. And it's one which I know, some of us like you, Gray, will have a special attachment to. It's that kind of game that I think is conducive to those sorts of special relationships. So I'm glad that we took the time to continue that to the point of Exile. Grail, thank you for that suggestion. That's a much more natural point on which to wrap up the stream. Appreciate you all staying with it for an extra 30 minutes. I think it was time well spent. And I'll end where I began. Like I said, challenging situation for me today, but as with the content of this game and the stuff it wrestles with, it's wonderful to be able to think about and navigate our way through games in the best of times, but also in the worst of times, and even just in interesting and salient times in our lives. Just as these characters are going through things that are informed and substantially improved by their connections with each other, fraught as those connections may sometimes be, so too are exercises like the live book clubbing of games really productive for not just thinking about the systems of meaning within these games, but also the networked meanings within all of our lives and how we can inform them together. So that's a roundabout way of saying that I'm very grateful for the real life JRPG party. It's a pleasure to work through these games with you, and just this mode of thinking and engaging with the world with all of you on any day, but especially a day like this. Means a lot. So truly, I thank you for that, and I'm excited to see where our journeys go next. Yeah, thank you, Grail. I appreciate that. God knows screaming into the void can be a big part of the storytelling too. So I appreciate that. Yes, Pottery, I'll see you Friday. Thank you for dropping by. Thank you for seeing it through. Appreciate talking with you as always. Chrissy, yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the well wishes as well. Pink Moon Neko, it was so nice to see you back, my friend. Hope to see you on Friday too. I'm not remembering if there are other people who showed up, but if you were lurking or if you shouted things out in the chat and I'm not remembering you, please forgive me. It's a pleasure to see you too. We'll be back on the same time at Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, to kick off the weekend the right way with Tales of Graces. And check that schedule. It's plastered, pinned on our Twitter feed as well, for Beyond the Dawn hype for the Tales of Arise DLC starting next week as well. Hopefully a publication between now and then too. So many good times rolling ahead, whether you love video game storytelling, the Tales series, philosophy of literature, anything in between, with The Terrible Fate as your place for it. Don't miss it. Don't be late. We won't wait, but we'll be delighted when you show up. 7 p.m. Eastern sharp. I'll see you on Friday, my friends. Think well, game well in the meantime. Be good. We'll be back soon. Cheers.